like to call to order the regular meeting of the City Council, January 21st, 2014. Let the record state that all members are here and present. We have a full house tonight, so if you could do me a couple of favors. Number one, make sure that you silence all your cell phones. Number two, if you're going to have a conversation, I'd ask that you have it outside the doors in the lobby there. Just the noise carries in the room here, and we just want to be respectful of each other tonight. So thank you very much. The first order of business tonight will be the invocation, which will be led by Councilman Bass.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful unto Thee for the opportunity we have to serve this community and serve the people within the community. As a council, we're grateful for being able to lead and guide and direct and acknowledge Thy hand in all things. We ask Thee to bless all of us that as we discuss things tonight, that we will do so in a civil manner, and that we will be a little kinder, a little nicer to each other. We especially pray for rains to come upon this area to alleviate the drought conditions. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
All right, and Councilman Nick will lead us in the pledge.
Please rise. Ready? Begin. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
All right, that brings us to the closed session report. City Attorney, is there anything to report out of closed session?
There was no reportable action, Mayor.
Okay. And that brings us to presentations. I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passed unanimously.
Agenda item 2, introduction of new employee, Peter Meyer, Water Quality Inspector, submitted by the Director of Public Works, City Engineer.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'd like to introduce to you Peter Meyer. Peter, come on up. Peter is our newest member of the city. He's our water quality inspector. He may seem familiar to many of you. He's actually worked here as a consultant for the last 3 years. So he's very familiar, hits the ground running. We appreciate Peter. Peter actually grew up in Crystal Cove in Newport Beach, right on the beach, and that's where he got his love for protecting the ocean. So he's got his degree in environmental analysis from UCI, about 10 years of experience, and we're very happy to have him on board.
Good evening. Well, welcome to the city officially as an employee, and we're glad to have you. Thank you.
Agenda item 3, introduction of new Chief of Police Services, submitted by the Deputy City Manager, Director of Management Services.
Mr. Mayor, member of the City Council, I think we got this announced like the last meeting, but we do formally want to recognize and welcome Lieutenant Brad Valentine as our new Chief of Police Services. I won't make him stand. He's the guy in the green suit over there. Well, yeah, stand up. In the green uniform, so easy to pick out in this crowd. He joined us actually officially on January 10th. As our new Chief of Police Services, and he will command the overall operation of law enforcement services in Lake Forest on behalf of the Orange County Sheriff's Department. He began his career with the Sheriff's Department in 1993 and served in the Corrections and Patrol Divisions, and he served as a field training officer and also on the Critical Incident Response Team and a member of the Hazardous Device Squad, so he's had some fairly interesting and challenging assignments throughout his career thus far. He actually worked 7 years in the city of Lake Forest already, so he's just coming back home. He was a patrol deputy here from 2000 to 2007, promoted to sergeant, and worked in both court operations and professional standards division. And he was promoted to lieutenant in 2012 and served as the watch commander at the Theo Lacey facility And prior to in Lake Forest here the other week, starting with us, he served as a lieutenant in the Professional Standards Division of the Sheriff's Department. Over the years, Lieutenant Valentine's received numerous awards for his work at the Sheriff's Department. I think he's particularly proud of some of his actions where he was awarded congratulations by the Mothers Against Drunk Driving, the MAD group. He was Lake Forest Deputy of the Year in 2003. Okay, so, and actually received the Medal of Courage in 2006 and a Gold Star Award in 2011 by the Sheriff's Department. He has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from California State University at Fullerton, and he keeps very busy in his private life. I won't go through the details on that. I'm sure we'll get to him later. But officially now, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, please join me in welcoming Lieutenant Brad Valentine as our new Chief of Police Services.
Thank you. I'm excited for the opportunity, and it's nice to be back in the city that welcomed me before, so looking forward to it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We're excited to have you. So it's we've had a great string of police chiefs here, and I have no doubt that you'll continue that. So thank you. All right. So now we'll take our report from the student liaison, if he's here. Fantastic.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is Jeff Dominic from El Toro High School reporting on January 21st, 2014. With the first semester finals just 1 week away, students begin to hit the books and study all of the material learned over the past few months to make El Toro very proud as they plan to ace the exams ahead of them. Finals will take place on a 3-day period from Wednesday, January 29th to Friday, January 31st. After finals, though, El Toro looks forward to 2 very important events. First, the annual Winter Formal Dance will take place at the elegant Marconi Automotive Museum on Saturday, February 8th. This will no doubt be an extremely fun dance with a live DJ as well as a live swing band to allow swing dancing. This theme for this year's Winter Formal is blue and golden globes in relation to the Chargers' colors being blue and gold. The second anticipated event this month is the El Toro Dodgeball Tournament. Dozens of teams from all grades get together to compete during on-campus games at snack and lunch to win the title. This past week, a club on El Toro named Operation Warmth held their annual collection of warm clothing to donate to the homeless. Also, this coming week, another club called Jeans for Teens is collecting pairs of pants to be donated to those less fortunate. Speaking of clothing, this past Friday night, the ET boys basketball team played Dana Hills, and there was a special giveaway to the students before the game. The basketball coach, Mr. Dixon, was giving away old jerseys to the first fans at 6 o'clock the night of the game. This was a great addition to the Charger Freak Show attire for ET fans. Lastly, all of the winter sports teams have been doing a great job in their leagues, with the boys basketball team beating their main league rival Mission Viejo and the boys soccer team beating the school rival Tribuco Hills. That's all for tonight. Thank you, and as always, go Chargers.
Go Chargers.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so now that brings us to our public comment portion of the evening. At this time, members of the public may address the City Council regarding any actions within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. No action may be taken on items not listed on the agenda unless authorized by law. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person and an overall time limit of 30 minutes for the public comments portion of the agenda. Any person wishing to address the City Council on any matter, whether or not it appears on this agenda, is requested to complete a request to speak form available over on the side here. The completed form is to be submitted to the city clerk over on my right prior to an individual being heard by the City Council. Madam Clerk, have there been any requests to speak?
Yes, Marcia Rudolph, followed by Jim Rosenberg.
Good evening. I have a vector control report for you. I am the city's representative to vector control. Vector control has a board of directors that includes every city in the county plus a representative from the board of supervisors, who currently is John Morlock. So that makes a goodly group of 34. So many of you might have seen, there's a flyer up by the agendas, and everyone up here got one because I passed them out. The vector of the month is the tick. And a tick is a tiny, tiny little critter, but it is responsible for things like Rocky Mountain spotted fever and Lyme disease, among other things. It is important to be aware of this critter, and if you are one of these people that lets your grass grow higher than it should, you might find that they're going to be making a home in that grass. The best thing to do is to keep your grass particularly and low-hanging shrubs trimmed so that these critters can't get in them or can't spend very much time in them. If you have someone get one of these things, they tend to grab on and take hold, and you have to be able to get them out of wherever they've taken hold of. There's a lot of myths, like, take a match and light it and the critter will come loose. No, not a good idea. The best thing to do is to take a pair of pliers, grab the critter by their proboscis, their mouth, as close to the body as you can, and then give a very good, consistent tug until you've got it loose. Make sure that you follow up with antiseptics and keep an eye on it, especially if it's a little one. You might want to talk to your pediatrician about it. Anyway, that's the vector of the month. And coming attractions, the next vector of the month will be squirrels. And it's very interesting. Vectors, for those of you who are not quite sure what I'm talking about, are critters that can transmit disease to the human population. Anyway, God bless. Happy New Year again. And I look forward to seeing you next week, or next meeting, with the wonderful squirrel.
Thank you.
Jim Rosenberg.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff, and the standing room only crowd behind me. I just want to take a couple of minutes to update everybody on something that is a moldy oldie to a point, to which I direct your attention to the plaque that hangs up on the far wall there from the 1st Law Enforcement Battalion, U.S. Marine Corps, that the city so graciously adopted, and we went full speed forward with the idea of an adoption ceremony right quick, and suddenly got the rug kind of pulled out from under us by the government folks. So we beat a strategic retreat and regrouped, and we're coming forward now with all guns blazing. As of last week, the ad hoc committee met. We are now a formal committee. We have officers. We have a mission statement as a charter. We are moving forward for a funding vehicle which should be completed within the next week to 10 days at most, to allow us to collect funds. And I have in a notepad sealed away in a mayonnaise jar all of the commitments that were made several months ago and will come kind of knocking on your door. Some other events, the tentative date, pretty final, but still somewhat tentative, is May 3. If you want to put that on your calendars, the venue will be El Toro High School, the stadium, which will be a great venue, parking right there, great place to display the static displays that they're bringing up, the vehicles, etc. We are going to try to effect a meeting next week, bring in city staff, committee, and obviously the folks from the unit up to do a walkthrough and kind of do all the logistics. We have 61 of the folks, servicemen and families, coming to Snowfest, thanks to donations that were put out there, so they're taking advantage of that. I have a trip scheduled tomorrow to meet with them at Camp Pendleton and
hopefully they will let me back out, to go over and kind of finalize a preliminary schedule for the entire year. So bottom line is we're off and running. They're really happy about getting involved and coming to our city events, and they're going to present us with a whole list of things they want us to do with them. So it's all good news. Thank you very much.
Mayor?
Absolutely.
Jim, as soon as you get the name for it, for you to collect the donations that we donate?
For?
that we would- When you get the name, would you
Yes.
please let us know?
Oh, yeah.
we can Start
yeah.
getting checks
Trust me,
wrote?
I got it all written down.
Yeah.
Voice prints. Know where you all live, at least by your email address. So, yeah, we'll come and knock. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. It's a good start. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to the entire committee for their leadership in putting this together, and much appreciated.
We've had no further requests.
Fantastic. That brings us to item 4 on the agenda, the warrant register. All matters listed under the warrant register are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the City Council, the public, or staff request specific items be removed from the warrant register for separate action. Madam Clerk, have there been any requests to remove any item from the warrant register?
No, Your Honor.
Council? I'll entertain a motion then.
Move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Now that brings us to the consent calendar, items 5 through 13. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the City Council, the public, or staff request specific items be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Madam Clerk, have there been any requests?
We've had no requests.
Council, any items you'd like to pull from the consent calendar?
Yes, item 10, the audit report, and then also register an abstention on the December 10th meeting minutes, but not on the 17th. I was actually on the council by then.
Acceptable to bifurcate that? Okay.
Move the remainder.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So you-
aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion passes unanimously.
Agenda Item 10, Audit Report, year-end June 30, 2013, submitted by Director of Finance, City Treasurer, and removed from the consent calendar by Councilmember Bass.
I don't really have any questions on it or need a staff presentation. Just wanted to make a few comments on it. One is, I am biased, I will admit that, but I do think that the audit is it's like going to the doctor once a year and getting a full-blown physical, seeing how you get more the executive type physical, not just the 15-minute type. And wherein someone or several from not associated with the city come in and review the books. Obviously, they don't know where things are and all that. And cooperation by the staff is very helpful. And they noted that the auditors noted that the staff was very helpful in all respects. One of the things I do, which might surprise people, before I read the numbers, I read the opinion of the audit. Because that gives me comfort as to the numbers in there. And the opinion is as I would expect it. It says that the financial statements, in all material respect, are good. There was no problems noted. They noted in reviewing some of the special grants and other funds that, again, staff was cooperative. They had the auditors had full access to everything, and all findings were great. There's no negative findings. Everything was fine. And so with that, I'd like to thank the staff for being cooperative with the auditors, and also with the auditors for taking the time and effort. I know they're paid for it, but still do a quality job in reporting to us. And with that, I'd move approval of the item.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passed unanimously. That brings us to the discussion action items on the agenda. Item number 14.
Agenda item 14, mobile home park conversion process, submitted by the Assistant City Manager.
Take a staff report this time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I'll defer actually to Mr. Belmer for staff's introductory remarks.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the Council. The City Council received comments from the public just before the end of the calendar year requesting the Council's consideration of a potential mobile home park conversion closure ordinance. Subsequently, the City Council directed staff to bring an item on the agenda for discussion at a future meeting, essentially just to provide a general overview of how the closure conversion process would work under existing state law. The agenda report before you this evening and its attachments, which include a report from the City Attorney, were prepared in response to the Council's request. The information provided to you includes a brief overview of the 4 mobile home parks that are located in Lake Forest, a history of the current status of the Prothero family's interest in the 3 of those 4 mobile home parks. The Prothero family has been an owner in the Saddleback Valley for many, many years. They own the land on which 3 of our 4 mobile home parks are located, subject to long-term ground leases, which expire sometime between 2025 and 2031, and we explain the history of their ownership and the current status of those ground leases. We also provide a brief description of some of the unique attributes of mobile home park residency, because it is a somewhat unique form of housing, and that you have both an ownership and a rental situation occurring simultaneously. In the most common structure, the person that owns the coach is actually renting the space on which their mobile home or home is located, which makes mobile home residency somewhat unique. And I think is as a result of some of those unique attributes that the state has a series of laws, which we summarize in our report, commonly referred to as the Mobile Home Park Residency Law, that govern not only the process of how you live in a park and pay your space rent and other rules and regulations, but also how the closure conversion process would be governed, even in the absence of a locally adopted ordinance. In addition, we thought the Council and the members of the public that have interest in the subject matter would benefit potentially from an example of a closure recently that occurred in Orange County, and that occurred in the city of Costa Mesa. And we provided an example of a park closure impact report for that transaction. And we explain in the staff report what a closure impact report is, and we liken it conceptually to an environmental impact report that's prepared for any development project of significant size, wherein the mitigations afforded park residents as a result of the closure, namely notification of a pending closure, as well as an opportunity to participate in that closure process, offer comments, and be heard at a public hearing, as well as receiving benefits from the park owner that under state law are required to cover the reasonable cost of their potential displacement or relocation from that park. In addition, and lastly, we thought the Council would benefit from having some general information about what's occurring throughout the county on the subject matter, and we found approximately 27 of the 34 cities in Orange County have mobile home parks, and of those we found that most are relying on state law. Only 6 throughout the county have adopted local ordinances. The remaining cities are relying on state law to govern that process should a closure be proposed in their community. We also then offer some concluding remarks in which we note that local ordinances are at the discretion of the City Council. And in the absence of such an ordinance, the process is highly regulated by state law. And the City Attorney's memorandum that is appended to the staff report provides some detail as to what the state what protections are afforded residents through those state law provisions. And as I mentioned, under state law, there is no circumstance in which a park can close without residents being informed of that closure and being able to participate in the process, and then potentially receiving benefits to cover relocation expenses and other matters of interest to them. And that closure impact report, even in the city of Lake Forest, under state law, without a local ordinance, would be required to be considered by our Planning Commission at a public hearing, in which case residents would be offered an opportunity to come and offer their comments to be heard on the subject matter. Then also in our concluding remarks, we talk a little bit about the uniqueness again of 3 of the 4 parks in our city. I mentioned the ground leases. And the Prothero family actually provided a letter that is also attached to the staff report, in which they explain their long history of ownership and essentially provide commentary on what their long-term plans are. That when those leases expire, their current plans and hope is that they would continue to operate those parks much in the same fashion that they've been operated in throughout their existing or previous terms of those ground leases. Prior to the posting of this agenda, we also received contact from the owner of the fourth mobile home park in Lake Forest. They are located in Northern California, and they own the Forest Gardens Mobile Home Park. They had read the staff report and also offered comment that they do not have any plans at this point in time. They were pleased to see that at this point in time the council was merely asking for information and education on the process, and informed staff that they also do not have any plans at this point in time to close their mobile home park. So, in conclusion, we have probably quite a number of members of the public this evening that are likely here to offer a comment on this subject matter, as well as members of the Prothero family, who also, as I mentioned, provided a letter. We also attached for your information a letter we received from Mr. Jim Froelich, who was one of the residents that contacted the city and requested consideration of this item. So with that, that concludes staff's report. We're certainly here to answer any questions that you may have, and I'll conclude my remarks at this point.
So, Council, do you have any questions specifically regarding that staff report? Okay. Then I assume we have a few public commenters.
Yes, and many of the speakers submitted some rather substantial documentation, which will be provided to the council, but at this point we'll be just calling the speakers' names.
Okay, great.
Julie Pauley, followed by Anton Patricio.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Julie Pauley. I'm with the Western Manufactured Community Housing Association. I'm the regional rep. We're a statewide association that represents mobile home park owners. And I've been working on this issue throughout Southern California for 5 or 6 years, and this is one of the most thorough staff reports I've ever seen on this issue. So I really commend your staff on a job well done. So I'm glad that Hillsborough contacted the city, because that was my concern, that you have a fourth property here that's not part of a land lease dynamic, that they're privately owned, and they would be kind of wrapped up in any sort of local ordinance that you passed. So, and when you start passing local ordinances on conversions and closures, there are some significant property rights issues that park owners are concerned about. Once you start going above and beyond what the state standards are for relocation standards, you start transferring the value of the property to renters. And that's really what park owners take issue with. Park owners have invested significant amount of capital, and they've risked it and invested in these properties, and then the wealth gets transferred essentially. So that needs to be said in this discussion, that those are our concerns when you're discussing this topic. But I think you have something very unique here in Lake Forest that I have never seen before, in that you have a potential property owner, the landowner, that has made it very clear he has no intention to change the use. That's not always the case. Sometimes, I mean, you're asking him what's going to happen to this land 17 years down the line, and he's telling you it's going to be a mobile home park. So I think that is something very unique. I'm not sure that you have a potential problem here that would require a local ordinance. So I would hope that you would do what Costa Mesa did and rely on state law for any sort of potential closure or conversion down the road. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anton Patricio, followed by Marion Norris.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members and staff. I'm Anton Patricio, and I'm a mobile home owner at Kimberly Gardens. I'm speaking about item 14, requesting for a mobile home park closure ordinance, and I would like to read to you the letter from the landowner that brought this request about. and you should have a copy of the letter as well. To the Board of Directors, Kimberley Gardens Owners Association. The purpose of this letter is to inform you of Sunny Partners' intent to continue operating the property located at 24922 Meallands Boulevard, Lake Forest, California, as a mobile home park when the ground lease expires in 2025. Subject to a satisfactory property inspection by Sunny Partners after the expiration of the ground lease and the ability of Sunny Partners to adequately and profitably run the business, Sunny Partners intends to continue to use the property as a mobile home park. While this intent reflects today's current position and that circumstances can change over time, the property has been used as a mobile home park for decades, and provided that the land is maintained in good condition, making it an economically viable and profitable enterprise, we fully anticipate continuing its operation as a mobile home park. Although this letter describes the landowner's intent along with several requirements, it does not provide the current or future mobile home owners with any security. And I therefore urge the Council to consider this ordinance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Marion Norris, followed by Bill Merritt.
And I just want to remind everyone, so there's 3 minutes for each of you. There's a light in front of you. Green, yellow, red means time to wrap it up. And if you could also state what city you live in.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, staff. My name's Marion Norris. I've been a resident of Lake Forest since 1978. We have a house off Meallands and El Toro roads in which we've lived for 26 years before moving to Prothero Park in 2004 so that our son and his family could move into the house. Our grandchildren go to the same schools that their father attended. In talking to other residents of the 4 mobile home parks in Lake Forest, I know we would really appreciate anything you could do for us to ensure our security. The parks are in such a convenient location, within walking distance, for most of us, of so many amenities. We have the library, post office, banks, a variety of eating places, all the services we require, such as doctors, dentists, pharmacists, pet stores, hairdressers, etc., all on the El Toro Road. So even if we drive, we're not on the roads for long. We know how you love to follow us as we tootle along at 10 miles an hour. And of course, we have our wonderful firemen and policemen just up the road who come to our rescue so quickly. Quite a few of us have lived in Lake Forest for many years. We forged so many connections here. Importantly, at our age, our doctors and many hospitals are within easy reach. The Lake Forest Senior Center has many great programs for us. Heritage Hill Historical Park has fun events has some great programs for us. Oh, wait a minute. At barely any cost to attendees. There are lots of small parks provided by the city where we can walk or sit in the sun. Thank you. We really appreciate them. You may think we're old, but we don't. We are keeping active and healthy. It would be very hard for us to up anchor and try to move. There are very few places that we could go. My daughter-in-law wouldn't have me. Many of us are on limited income. We don't wish to be a burden to anyone, but we would like to have peace of mind in knowing our homes are safe for us, in our lifetime, and possibly for our children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Merritt, followed by Greg Woodward.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the staff and council members. My name is Bill Merritt. I live at Kimberley Gardens Mobile Home Park. And to be brief, on behalf of the residents of Kimberley Gardens, I would like to extend our thanks and appreciation to you for considering our request for a mobile home park closure conversion ordinance. The fact that you are now considering this has given us a ray of hope for our protection in the event that the landowners decide to close and convert Kimberly Gardens. We are looking to you for support, for without your approval of an ordinance to protect us from a park closure, we are at the mercy of the landowners. And in conclusion, on behalf of mobile home owners in the city of Lake Forest, I thank you again and request that you approve an ordinance to protect us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg Woodard, followed by Cynthia Key.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and staff. My name is Greg Woodard. I am a resident of Mission Viejo, though I live just on the other side of Saddleback, and I spend an awful lot of time and resources in Lake Forest, great town center and everything. So I am actually an attorney. I'm here representing Kimberly Gardens tonight. You've heard from several of the residents of my client who have come to request that you guys consider an ordinance that will require the payment of relocation costs in the event of a park closure. As you heard from the staff report, my client currently owns the land lease through 2025 for the park. The underlying landowner, the fee owner, the Protheros, they have recently been meeting with mobile home residents, and I attended one of those meetings, and consistent with the staff report, they gave us a good recount of the history that they've had in here, and they also indicated that that as long as the park remains profitable, they intend on maintaining it as a mobile home park. One of the earlier commentators, Anton, submitted the letter that he read, and that was provided to my client in August of 2010, and is consistent with that, which that plan, which is as long as the park remains profitable, the Protheros can plan on continuing on operating it as a park. And my client, after the meeting, and they appreciate the Protheros coming out, they don't have any reason to doubt those intentions. However, what my client wants is the security from this council in the event that, the unfortunate event that the park becomes unprofitable when they take over, and the Protheros have to either sell or seek a change of use. And along those lines, in order to protect my client's financial situation, I need to address something with respect to the MRL that's in the staff report. And I think it's an inaccuracy in the staff report, and that is the staff report indicates that the MRL requires the repayment of, or the payment of relocation costs in the event of a closure, and that's not accurate. And please confirm with the city attorney. What the MRL says is that in the event an applicant comes before the council and seeks to close the park or change the use, the city council has the option of requiring relocation costs. There is nothing currently that I know of in state law that requires relocation costs to be paid, and that's why these cities that were noted in the staff report have prepared their own local ordinances. And those ordinances do require the payment of relocation costs. My clients, as you are well aware, many of them, of my clients' residents, many of them are on a very strict financial budget. And as you can see from the example from Costa Mesa, relocation costs are considerable. And so what my client is seeking is that its residents, in the unfortunate event of a park closure, that they're taken care of. And the way that they can be taken care of is through an ordinance that this council can pass. And so in closing, what my client would like from you this evening is that you direct staff to prepare a draft ordinance to be brought forward at a future council meeting for discussion, and ultimately they would like a vote, yes or no, on that ordinance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Cynthia Key, followed by Stephen Prothero.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council, Lake Forest, the staff, and Lake Forest residents. My name is Cynthia Key, and I'm a resident of El Toro Mobile Estates. I am here tonight along with several of my friends and neighbors, they should be standing right now, regarding a city ordinance covering mobile home park closures. I personally have lived in my home for 22 years. When we moved in, we were informed the park is on leased land and that the lease would expire November 2025. I remember thinking that's 33 years away. I probably won't even be here then, and if I am, either the lease would be extended or another long-term lease will go into effect. Well, I'm still here. I can't imagine going anywhere else, and November 2025 is only 11 years, 11 months away. Our homes are not stick-built. They do not cost as much, but they are every bit as important to us as those expensive stick-built homes are to their owners. We just don't own the land on which our homes sit. Not a problem as long as we're fairly compensated should the landowners choose to sell their property or decide they want to develop it differently. We are in no way telling the owners what they should do with their land. It is theirs, and they have every right to do with it as they feel best for their own future. What we are asking council to do is to protect the investments of the residents who live in the 4 mobile home parks within the city of Lake Forest by adopting a park closure ordinance, giving us adequate compensation for relocation. The ordinance would be an insurance policy of sorts, protecting the mobile home owner's investment. The landowners will tell you they have no intention of selling their land or changing the use. They intend to take control and operate the parks themselves. However, they will not provide us any legally binding written agreement of same. Intentions, no matter how honorable or good, can change, and while spoken in good faith, are not legally binding. I do not have any intention of having an accident or requiring long-term disability. However, I have insurance policies to protect me should either happen. Things change, circumstances change, and if any of us could predict the future, we would all be multimillionaires. For those mobile homeowners who might wish or need to sell their homes now, they are finding it increasingly difficult, if not impossible, because potential buyers have no guarantee their investment will be protected once the leases on the parks run out. 3 of the 4 mobile home parks are senior parks. Our mobile home parks are the most affordable senior housing available in the area. Senior communities as a whole are not a drain on city resources. We do not have young children in the school systems. We do not normally have 3 or 4 cars per household, so there's less traffic in our communities. And because seniors do not tend to drive as much, we support local businesses. Many of our local businesses are thriving because seniors are such a fast-growing population. Have you been to a doctor, medical facility, or pharmacy recently? Most of the customers are seniors. On the whole, seniors are good for the economy of a city. It's also harder for seniors to relocate and try to find new doctors, new hospitals, and new places of worship. It will be either members of this city council or a future city council to determine our fate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen Prothero, followed by Ralph DeVoe.
Evening, Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Steve Prothero. I'm one of the Protheros who, along with other family members in attendance tonight, own the land on 3 of the 4 mobile home parks in the city of Lake Forest. Our family has been in Lake Forest since the late 1800s. Family members have been involved in shepherding in place the water infrastructure for Lake Forest, building the post office to maintain the community's autonomy, donated the El Toro Library site, as well as mentoring the establishment of Heritage Hill Park and convincing the county to take over the El Toro Cemetery when it was all weeds. During the late 60s, with the advent of development and the property tax structure where the land was taxed at the highest and best use, we were forced to either sell or lease the property as a residential use. We chose to maintain ownership of the property, and our only option, at least what the county allowed, was to put it into a mobile home park, and we solicited developers and subsequently signed a 55-year lease to those developers who have continued to operate the park, with the exception of Kimberly, which was sold to the tenants, or some of the tenants. Recently, well, I think you know the 2 of the leases expire in 2025. Some of the tenants were getting nervous, and rumors and fear-mongering had been propagated by certain members that the parks would close the minute we took it over, and we've been doing a little damage control on that, as it was untrue. During the last 2 weeks, we met with each park group to put a face on the Prothero family, as well as clarify that we will continue to operate the parks as they are viable today, and they will be then. Regarding the ordinance, we do not support it. We like the council to have the flexibility as necessary. We also think it's a property rights issue, that it would tip the balance toward the tenants of rights that we currently have. The issue caught us by surprise, and it's required us to gain a little knowledge, which is probably useful because we will be taking the parks over in the future. And I'd like to compliment the city on the information they presented. I thought it was very educational. We're open to any questions the council may have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ralph DeVoe, followed by Vicki Talley.
Good evening. My name is Ralph DeVoe, and I've lived in Lake Forest for over 30 years. The 76 station at Trabuco and El Toro Road, I worked there for 20 years. The last 11 years, I was employed by Saddleback Hospital. I've been in Kimberly Gardens over 30 years. Well, my second wife, first one passed. I raised 4 kids out of Kimberly Gardens. I would not presume to tell anybody what they should be doing with their property, but when people say with their lips, I'm a capitalist, that's all good intentions, but when it reaches my ears, what I hear is money before people. Some of us have a vested interest. We've been there a long time in Kimberly Gardens and in the city of Lake Forest, and we should be protected with whatever happens. I'm an Eagle Scout, a Catholic boy from Boston, and the nuns and my parents used to tell me the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vicki Talley, followed by Christina Tackett.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Vicki Talley. I'm the Executive Director of the Manufactured Housing Educational Trust. We represent the 4 business owners in town here who operate and own mobile home parks. I might say that we don't represent Kimberly, so that would have been a misstatement on my part, wouldn't it? So I apologize for that, the other parks. The reason, first off, I want to also add my compliments to the City Manager's Office and the City Attorney's Office for a very comprehensive report. And in fact, I would encourage everyone in the audience to read it because it answers so many questions. And I think there's several misperceptions out there. There is no one living in a mobile home park in your city or anywhere else in the state of California that is at the mercy of the landowner. There is no one else whose security is threatened. There is no one else in the state of California or your city who needs an insurance policy beyond what currently exists in state law. The state law fully occupies this field, and I'm sorry that the attorney for the residents of Kimberly Gardens isn't aware of California Government Code Section 65863.7, which very specifically outlines what mitigation measures must be taken should a landowner decide to reuse the land. So that is all included in your staff report, and I know you've each had an opportunity to read it, but I wanted to go on the public record making sure that everyone here understands that in fact they are absolutely protected under state law. There is no need for the city of Lake Forest to adopt any other ordinance in this regard. I've had a lot of personal experience with park closures, and I can tell you that in order to close a park, the closure impact report is reviewed by the city. Planning Commission, City Council will review it and find if it's adequate and if the mitigation measures are appropriate. So you absolutely have an overview under state law and don't need to adopt any other regulations. So I'm here to answer any questions you may have. If you feel that there are any, I can't imagine given the report that you've received from staff, but Thank you for the time, and always available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
May you repeat that code, California Civil Code?
California Government Code, Section 65863.7. And it basically outlines what must be included in a report that must be filed with the local jurisdiction.
And so that is actually the MLR, the Mobile Home Park Residency Law?
No. The Mobile Home Residency Law is California Civil Code Section 798. And what that code outlines is under the circumstances under which a park may close. And so that it outlines every single resident of every mobile home park in the state of California is required to be given a copy of California Mobile Home Residency Law. In that law, it specifically states under what circumstances a park can close.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome. Thank you.
Christina Tackett, followed by James Potter.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and City Council residents and staff. I'm a resident of Kimberly Gardens. We moved in, I don't know when, but before the economic crisis, we moved up to Orange County and discovered that home prices here were just going crazy, so we bought in Kimberly Gardens instead of buying a house. We did everything right. We have good jobs. We did nothing wrong, and what we're finding now, that if we go to sell our house, and we've talked to lenders, our house isn't worth anything. We can't sell it. I'm a property owner that cannot sell my house, just like every other resident, because of when we bought, we were told, well, even though there's a land lease that's going to expire, they plan on running it the same way, but now we're further down the road. Banks aren't saying that this is the law. Banks are saying that they can sell this property and kick us out, and that all these people that are living there on fixed incomes would be responsible for moving their property, their home, their house. We also are property owners. The Prothero family might have good intentions, and I believe they do, but we are property owners. Thank you.
Thank you.
James Potter.
Mayor, council members, and staff, my name is James Potter. I live in Yorba Linda, California. I believe the state of California ordinance does what is most appropriate for the city, and that gives at the potential time whenever it may or may not happen down the road, it gives the city council at the time the latitude to decide what is fair and what is reasonable for relocation. So depending on conditions and what may be appropriate for the city at large, not just residents, to determine how a park would be closed and not closed. And to do something today may be short-sighted for the residents as a whole within the city. What I hear, this evening is, people want assurance, but they also say the Prothero family should be able to do what they want with their property. So really what it comes down to is money. And whether you would structure an ordinance that would, as it's been said before, shift a property right from a property owner to a tenant. And I believe we've had enough rights being diminished as we've moved through, this term and century that, we don't need more. The state of California has sufficient language for concerning the residents and their financial well-being. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've had no additional requests.
All right. I'll bring it back to the council.
Yeah.
Councilman Boyds.
I'd like to, as city attorney, it's been brought up by the Greg Woodard, lawyer for the plaintiff for the property or the Kimberly Gardens. Is the mobile home residency law, is that a state mandate upon tenants' rights as it goes to closures?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, both the Civil Code and the Government Code sections mentioned apply in all cases to closures. If I could get clarification, Mayor, Councilmember Voights, are you talking about the relocation element or just the
I'm talking, well, it's basically the relocation element of that, to where I know that one is a California Civil Code and the other one's a government code.
If I could, Mayor and Council, the text for both of those sections is parallel, and let me just read it to you, and then I'll tell you how I think it would be implemented. It says, a legislative body or its delegated advisory agency shall review the report prior to any change of use or sale, and may require as a condition of the change the person or entity to take steps to mitigate any adverse impact of the conversion. And then it goes on to list relocation as a possibility. So the legislative body, the city, under these sections, has a discretion to impose conditions on the change. But as a practical matter, in our housing market, I can't think of a case where relocation would not be identified as a mitigation strategy, not just under the mobile home park law, but under the California Environmental Equality Act. Under CEQA, the city's going to be looking at impacts on housing stock, consistency with the city's general plan housing element, and I assume that there are going to be impacts found there. Under CEQA, mitigation identified for those impacts is mandatory. So I think when you look at both those laws working together, it would be very difficult to imagine a scenario where relocation isn't identified as a mitigation and then would be required to be imposed, at least under CEQA.
One more question, if I follow up. Attachment 6 actually it deals with the closure of a park in Costa Mesa. Was that a government law that was put forth by ordinance? That's on page 368.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Voights and Mayor and Council. I double-checked with Mr. Belmer. The Costa Mesa report that you're referring to was generated pursuant to state law only. That's all that is required there is compliance.
And so the allocation of monies and expenses to move that's all, and the per diem and all that accessories that go along with mobile home movings and stuff was all included in that according to the state government law.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a little bit of vested interest in this, but first I'd like to declare that I did speak with Stephen Prothero, and Vicki Talley did call me. We didn't get a chance to talk. I've had some emergencies in my family, health emergencies, so I didn't get a chance to speak. But one thing that some of you may or may not know, and Jim, I know you know, because when Prothero was, when it came up for Prothero to purchase Kimberly Garden to purchase their land lease, I was involved from the beginning and aware of what was going to happen. But from before you ever got the land lease, I have been involved with mobile home issues. I'm on a mobile home task force for the state of California. It took me 12 years to get the League of California Cities to take and put mobile home task force, mobile home on their scope. After having 2 meetings at 2 different conferences, they created a task force. And so the League of California City works with the legislators to make sure that mobile homes or residents are protected. Also, after a quite extensive time, since the 90s, I've been involved with Southern California Associate of Government, which is the regional council, and here last year, in 2013, they have put mobile homes on their scope also. I've sat on several different housing committees and board, state, region, and local. I'm the chair of the Orange County Housing Authority. They now have put mobile homes on their task force. There's a lot of legislation that is going forward. And Vicki, are you still here? Can you raise your hand? Yeah. Vicki Talley will know what was 2 years ago we had our first statewide task force meeting with all the major manufactured housing and all the elected officials from all over this state that had mobile home in their cities and was interested in making sure their citizens were protected. Right now, there is still legislation going on, and the lobbyist from the League of California Cities is right across the street from the Capitol, and they are lobbying to refine some of the things that, and some of these laws that you see. I'm sorry that y'all didn't have a copy to know what protection you did and did not have, but this isn't something that's at the whim of the Protheros or any other families or agencies or corporations that own mobile parks. The laws that are put in place is across the board. And yes, cities do have some in play in there, but not to the extent that some of you may think they do. As far as the Protheros family is concerned, I haven't been here since the family was first came here in the 1800s, but just since the 60s when I came here in 1960s, I have known the Protheros family since it was El Toro, and I have never known them to not be people of their word. And the things that were mentioned that they did do here. The very first thing when I heard about them closing, because number one, the mother and Ray Prothero, we were very, very close, and that's a disclaimer that I'd like to make sure you know. The first thing I did is I got on the phone and I called Steve and said, Steve, what is this about closing the parks? And he told me that that's not our intention. Someone was reading, I'm sorry, I can't remember which person, was reading a portion where it says in condition. In those applications to purchase Kimberly, I'm quite sure, Jim, you remember, one of the reasons that they did, that it did get purchased is because it must be returned in proper conditions. If you let it deteriorate, the mobile homes that is on any of this land here in Orange County cannot be, even if you had the money, pick it up and move it to another park. The mobile parks here in Orange County, they don't let used mobile homes come into their parks as a whole. So that's not an option. But you do have in place, we are still working on refining some more things, because there's still a lot of things going on in mobile homes across the state. I sit in meetings and have phone conferences and video conferences with different mobile home people and electeds all over the state. And there are issues we are still working on. I've came to most of all your parks, and I've said, you got issues, let me know, I will take them up with me. We are still working on refining things. There is laws that are still pending for better protection, but we cannot take away mobile home, the park owners, the land owners' rights from them, but we can work where it's a win-win for everyone. And there is still things between now and 2025. There's going to be a lot of changes in laws. Right now, cities don't have authority, ultimate authority over mobile homes. It goes through HCD. And that's something that cities are considering, working to see how we can work better to have things as far as the safety and all like this. There is limited on what we can do. So these things are still pending. There is no one can just come in and shut down a mobile home, even if they do own the land. And I'm quite sure there may be a few here and there throughout our state that has attempted, but the state does protect you in that way, and they do have to pay to transport you and stuff, depending on situations and stuff. So this is something that I know. It's not something that is guessed, and I'm still engaged. Even before I was on city council, I was fighting mobile home parks because my mother lived in one, and because, as you know, when we're seniors, for all of you that are seniors, we want to be self-sufficient. We don't want to burden our children. So instead of my mother letting me know what was going on in her park, after the fact, I found out, and it's something that could have been prevented from them taking her home, because a mobile home is a home to people that live in it. And from that day forward, I have been fighting mobile home issues all over the state. In fact, people from other electeds from other cities and other counties call me in reference. and I do get on it, and Vicki can tell you there's times I do give them a rash. But in the meantime, you've got some laws that we're working on right now. Well, you already have the exit law. That means when they take and try to close down a park, they do have to go by the state guidelines. But we have some other things that we're refining and working with the landowners and with the state, the region, and now by being the chair of the housing, I got a chance to have them to put it on their scope. So all the people, in fact, we're getting ready to have a meeting with the county's housing and the region to try and get some issues taken care of on mobile home. I think you may be a little bit premature because we got a lot of things going on, and before even if we put this audience in, one of the things you have with what what you want us to put in, when the laws change, because we are working on some things right now to change things, you could block yourself where you couldn't be a part of that change, and you still have time to work on that. You could come back at any time and ask for an ordinance to be put in. But right now, the things that we're putting in place to protect you even further than you're already protected, you could take, and like the one from Forest Garden, it could impact them that they have a complete different situation. And Kimberly is a different situation from all three of the others because you own the lease there. Each the other two mobile home parks, that's El Toro and Prothero, it could affect you if we get it, no matter how we work it and try to massage it, it could affect you with what we're putting in place now. You could be bound by that ordinance and not be able to partake of the laws that the state already is working with us to get refined and put in place for you. So you may want to think about that and come back and ask us for an audience that after these things that we're working on to refine things, because right now we got a lot of stuff pending on mobile homes, and it's a win-win where the owners aren't going to fight us so hard and we don't have to fight them so hard. I mean, sometimes it gets pretty bloody in our fights, but we still come out, shake hands, and come back for the next round, as Vicki can tell you. So you may want to think about that.
Great. Councilman Bass?
Yes, I have a question for the city attorney. Mr. Smith, in your portion of the report on page 361, item C, you talk about subdivision for conversion to residential ownership supported by two-thirds majority of the residents. Can you briefly describe that and its impact on the residents?
I'm sorry, Councilman Bass, can you tell me what page you're on again?
Well, in the
361.
361.
361.
Oh, sorry. Let me get to where you are.
It's
wait, I found
paragraph C.
Yeah. So let me try to get fresh on this. Yeah. That means that if two-thirds of the owners desire to purchase the park to convert it to residential ownership, i.e. it becomes owner-occupied, then the city the state law provides shortcuts through normal subdivision processes that allow that subdivision to occur. So what these really are is exceptions to the normal subdivision processes, costs, mapping, remapping, that would otherwise apply if it becomes if two-thirds of the residents vote to acquire their
and so the conversion to residential would be conversion to, it would still be mobile homes. Right.
But owner-occupied, yes.
And does this effectively provide, almost a right of first refusal?
That's Mayor and Council, that's exactly how I describe it, yes.
Okay. So in any lease situation, the lessee, if the lessor decides to do something, the lessee has right of first refusal. The lessor is not giving up any property rights. They just have to give the people there the first shot at it.
On equal or better
on equal or better terms. I would presume it would be equal, not better, but you never know. Okay,
That's right.
thank you.
Sure.
Councilman Nick? Or Mayor Pro Tem, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. This is very difficult. It is about balancing the rights of the real property owner, the individual or the family or the corporation who owns the real property. That must be balanced against the rights of those who have the leasehold rights, the rights of the individual who's got the leasehold. Both have rights, no doubt about it. Both have property rights, no doubt about that, just different properties. The more I have looked at this for the last few days, and I have agonized over it, I surely have lived in a region of the world where I saw many, many people, families displaced, war, poverty, you name it, I saw it. To this day it goes on. It goes on in Gaza Strip, it goes on in Palestine, parts of Israel, most of the Middle East, fighting over the same property. There is no easy solution, that's for sure. Luckily, here in America we are civilized. We have civil processes. So we don't have to go after each other with machetes or AK-47s. I have been reviewing the government code as well as the civil code, especially for the last few days. Although not an attorney, at least not yet, it seems to me as though this matter is fully occupied by state law. It is preempted by state law. One thing we must not do as member of a city council is to interfere with a greater law, and that is a state law. However, I would do that any day of the week, twice on Sunday, if I thought the state law was not worthy or was not complete. I find it very complete, very comprehensive. Again, the matter is fully occupied by state law. I take comfort in knowing that although the matter is preempted by state law, I, as a member of the council, get to have the final say. So, my brothers, my sisters, this council gets to have the final say. If and when the time comes, you will be done right by. That's a promise. The government code, right here, tells me the legislative body, that's us, or its delegated advisory agency shall review the report, that's the impact report, the closure report, prior to any change of use, and may require as a condition of the change the person or entity to take steps to mitigate any adverse impact of the conversion, closure, or cessation of use on the ability of displaced floating homeowners, residents, to find adequate housing in a floating home marina. So, if there is the slightest possibility that it will be done wrong, it will not happen. It will come before this council when the time comes, and we will see to it that everybody's right is protected and nobody is enriched at the expense of another. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I'd just like to say I appreciate everyone coming out tonight and voicing your concerns on every side of the issue, and I'm sure there's more than two, to be honest with you, just from what I've heard tonight. The one thing that I'm encouraged by is the fact that it seems like there's more dialogue and communication between the parks and the Protheros than there has been recently. I think that's one good thing that's come out of this for sure, and I definitely want to encourage that to continue. I think that the more you communicate with one another, the more you're going to be able to trust the word of the other, and the more the Protheros will also be able to trust that the property will be left in good condition when they do take over in 2025. I'll tell you, as a member of the community, as your representative, my concerns are twofold. Number one, the condition of the park, the parks, to make sure that they're well maintained. And I would hate to see some to feel like it's not necessary to maintain them because they're just going to be taken over by someone else who's going to be running them in the future, and that would be really disappointing to the community as a whole. I know it would be disappointing to a lot of you if your neighbors felt that way, and if you know, they treated their residents and the surrounding area in a poor way. So that's one concern that I have, and I just want to encourage all of you to really focus on that. The second was, one of the speakers, I forget who it was, mentioned the challenge in selling their mobile home with the potential uncertainty. And I heard loud and clear that maybe some banks wouldn't take a letter from a family as being the family that owns the property as being enough. I don't know if there's a way to come together on that to be able to provide something that would be more substantive, so that those that may decide to move sometime in the next 10 years have that option. I don't know what opportunities there are, but I just encourage that dialogue as well. I've stated on a number of occasions that I'm a strong private property rights advocate, and as Mayor Pro Tem Nick mentioned, there are property owners on a couple of sides here for sure. Those that own their mobile home, those that own the land. We want to make sure that that's balanced as much as possible. I too have spent a lot of time reviewing the civil code here, and the particular element that was brought out, the 65863.7. Spent some time taking a look at that, and there's some language in there about what when a park is being converted, what must happen. A lot of the musts are communication and report. And then there's the may happen. And the may happen is the council or our designated organization, which would be the Planning Commission, looking at that closure impact report and determining what mitigation efforts need to be put forth. And I understand that there could be some concern about that. And let me just explain kind of how this could work from a process perspective, just if we tried to do what's being asked tonight. I'll play out a scenario here, and I'm sure some people disagree with me. It always happens. There's always a few, but here's a scenario that could be could occur. We could pass an ordinance sometime this year, and then that ordinance could be rescinded sometime over the next decade. And then we're back to the same spot that we are, because it just takes a majority of a council to do that. Okay, so if we passed one now, there's no guarantee that it'll still be in place 11 years from now. Our ordinance is customarily repealed, not very often, but when people are motivated, they can get the right people in to change ordinances. So then the question is, well, what if we do nothing and we just focus on what the state law says right now, which is a closure impact report needs to come to the city. It'll end up going to the Planning Commission. They'll look at it, look at those mitigation efforts, mitigation issues, and try to determine what makes the most sense to make sure that any people who are being displaced that might need to relocate are being treated fairly. There's going to be a lot of different definitions of the word fair, but that's going to be for that legislative body, which state law calls for, which is us or our designees, which would be the Planning Commission, and it'll probably end up coming to us regardless, to make that decision on what's fair. That's what we're here for. So when I look at it, I look at this issue, I just say, we could potentially pass something now, but it could be repealed in the future. Or we could focus on what state law says right now. And then 11 years from now, there's a high probability that I won't be the one sitting here. I fully understand that part, okay? Especially if we enact term limits and who knows what might happen in the future. But there's a high probability that I won't be sitting up here, come 11 years, or could be 20 years, 30 years from now. Who knows? If it ever happens, because the family's saying they're not even talking about a closure. And at this point, I haven't found anything that would dispute that. I think that they're saying what their best intentions are right now, but it's, if it were 11 years from now, I might not be here, but the people that are here, again, they're either going to be here because they've been pushed from one lobby or another, or they're going to be treating you fairly. And if they're coming from one faction or another, they would also be the same ones that would change an ordinance if we were to pass one right now. So that's where I'm coming from at this point. But I want to get back to where I started my comments, and those are that, number one, I'm encouraged that there's more communication. Even if it might be a little contentious at times, when you first meet someone who might potentially be your adversary, of course it's going to be contentious. As you get to know them and you spend more time communicating with them, you might find that you're of like mind, and that if you work together, that you can come up with something even better. And again, those issues would be making sure that the park's really well maintained, so that when they take it over in 2025, that it is a good park for them. It's not one that they're going to have to invest a lot of money in to keep going, because if they have to do that, that makes it a little less profitable for them, and might make it more difficult for them to make that decision at that point. So again, I want to try to encourage that communication as much as possible, and I think that this has been a good education process for all of us, you all as well as the council, as well as the staff, and this will be an issue that will pop up sometime in the future, but in all honesty, it could be decades from now, because what we're all hearing right now is that they have no intention of closing the park, and I take that as a good sign, because they're not required to tell you that they're going to do that. They could tell you, hey, we plan on closing it in 2025, and there's really nothing we could all do other than go through state law the same way we are right now and talk about what relocation efforts there would be. They're not saying that. They're saying they want to keep it open. I'm encouraged by that. I hope you all are as well. But I understand that there is some concern, and I hope that that communication and dialogue can continue. At this point, I'd like to ask the rest of the council if there's anything that you'd like to do.
I just have one last comment.
Sure.
Before we close. I'm very grateful that we're all here, because I don't remember meeting the young lady that represents Forest Garden, and but I know that I know the Prothros, and Vicki has been invited to those state meetings. There will be a line of region and the county. We're just getting aboard, and also. If you keep communicating with your people and you have something you want to bring to us, because all the different, the state, the region, and the county, I am connected with them, and we will be lobbying the legislators to make sure it's balanced. Vicki's been to the meetings. Y'all can talk to her since she's representing all of them except for Forest Garden. You may want to either get with Vicki or get involved with them, because I am bringing this to the county level now that we have the state and the region aboard. And for the citizens, you have something that you feel that can tweak. That doesn't mean it's going to be done, because when we go in the room and we discuss, We do tug of war, we do a little pushing, they give a little, we give a little. It's negotiating. And then we also have the legislators that we be negotiating to change the laws or get better laws and stuff. So you can take and get those to us also, and if you can't get to one of them, you can get it to me, because I do stay on top of mobile home issues. It is one of my pet peeves on making sure there's a balance there. So don't give me a bunch of silly stuff, because really, I read stacks and stacks of stuff on this and these different laws and stuff, and it's going to take me away from what we can do. Make reasonable, obtainable goals, and that's for both sides. As Vicki know, we don't take any foolishness. We get right to the points, and we hash them out and try to get something done that's going to work for both parties. That's the owners of the mobile home itself and the owners of the land. So I think that we all need to work together so we can get something where people don't feel threatened or afraid, and you can still make your dollar, but they can still have a home that they can afford. Thank you, Mayor.
Great.
I just want to thank all of you for coming, and I want to thank the Prothero family for showing up at the mobile homes and opening a line of communication. And, you know, communication is a wonderful thing, and we've heard you. I'm a long-time El Toro boy. I grew up working at Good Shepherd Lutheran Home up El Toro Road, and though you guys are part of Lake Forest, and we're not going to leave you out hanging. So I just want you to know that I feel good about what the family said, but the fact is the final say does come through us, and I believe that the government code will be enforced in our city. I feel comfortable that we will be watching out for you, and hopefully take pride in those parks, because that the value of those parks is maintained by how well you guys keep well of the parks. So I want to thank you guys for coming. We heard you, and we will be opening and keeping a dialogue open with you. So look at it us as friends, because we're there for you. So thank you.
Well, with that, I'll move that we just receive and file a report. Looking for a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay. And we're going to take a 5-minute recess, so those of you who don't want to stick around for the rest of it, you're free to go. All right. So we're going to move on to item 15.
Agenda item 15, report on the Planning Commission's workshop regarding potential modification to the city's regulations for temporary signage, outdoor business promotions, live entertainment, and campaign signs, submitted by Director of Development Services.
And a staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and I will defer to Ms. Ackerman for a staff presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. We have a short presentation tonight regarding potential modifications to the city's signage regulations, most often used by the business community. Through city surveys and staff contact with the business community, primarily with the planning, economic development, and code enforcement staff, we've received comments on ways to improve our signage regulations and to allow increased opportunities for business promotion. In January of 2013, Councilmember Voits presented this as an initiative as part of his inaugural mayor comments. Staff prepared a general work plan, and we brought this to the council in May, and the council requested that we also take a look at campaign signage regulations. So we added that to the work program and worked with the attorney's office on that particular topic. We presented general recommendations to the Planning Commission for their input, and this evening we'd like to share the recommendations of the Planning Commission regarding these 4 specific sign types or promotional activities. And as Stephanie said, it's temporary signage, temporary outdoor business promotions, or TOPPs as we call them, live entertainment regulations, and campaign signs. So very quickly, temporary banners. This is really one of the most frequently used temporary signage applications by our business community. The current regulations allow for banners to be 50 square feet, and the sign code currently allows 2 30-day banner permits per business in a given year. The Planning Commission recommended increasing the time, the size, and the number of banners available, and also adding a new type of banner, a flag banner, which is a freestanding banner that's not attached to the building itself. Specifically, the Planning Commission recommended the following. They wanted to double the allowable time to 4 times a year for 30 days each versus the 2 times a year for 30 days we currently have. They wanted to increase the size of the banner proportional to the size of the building. So the banner could be anywhere from 50 to 100 square feet, depending upon the amount of frontage that the business had. They wanted to increase the number of banners for businesses that have more than 1 frontage on a street or a parking lot, and then to allow the flag banners that I mentioned just a moment ago. The next category was window signage. Window signage is a specific type of signage that's regulated by the city's sign ordinance, and the current regulations we found, as we compare ourselves to other cities, are very restrictive. Our code allows for a maximum of 4 square feet of signage per business, and this is just a little nuance here. Our code also allows for a category called incidental window signage. So that's things like your business hours of operation, emergency contact, the MasterCard symbols, things like that. That is not included in the 4 square feet. That's allowed as without a permit, but that does leave us with the 4 square foot per business. The Planning Commission recommends that we increase this to be 25% of the window area for the business, not to exceed 30 square feet, and not to include more than 3 signs. And we have some examples in the Planning Commission staff report that's attached to the council report to show what that would look like. You can see a graphic. It shows how much 4 square feet is on a sample elevation and what the maximum 30 square feet, 25% of the window in 3 separate signs, what that looks like. Our next category is temporary outdoor promotions. We call this TOPP. And this is a 10-day event that a business can have where we allow greater flexibility to have activities outside. So it could be an outdoor sale or some kind of a special event, a parking lot sale, barbecues, landscape materials for sale, something like that. And our current regulations only allow for a single banner to be used to identify this outdoor promotional event. And the Planning Commission is recommending that the code be amended to allow additional forms of signage during an event, such as balloons or streamers or flags. And so they haven't gotten specific in their recommendation, but they're saying allow more. And again, the Planning Commission staff report, we provided a whole host of examples of types of additional signage that could be used for an event like this. The Planning Commission also recommended that a business could have, that we change the timing of the TOPPs, and a business could have 180 days. Oh, I'm sorry, the code currently permits 4 10-day events, and the Commission wanted to increase that to 6 10-day events. So if we look at the banners that we talked about at the beginning, and then the temporary outdoor promotions, this would give a total of 180 days of promotional activities for a business during the course of a year, a 60-day period and the 120-day period. The Commission also looked at live entertainment regulations, and in this category, they're recommending that the city develop specific criteria so that entertainment can take place outdoors. Currently, live entertainment has to take place inside, and so they wanted us to take a more careful look and are recommending that with some regulations that live entertainment be allowed outdoors as well. Our final category of signage that the Commission looked at is campaign signs. And briefly, the city's code currently has 2 types of permitted campaign signage. The first is a stake sign. It's a sign on a post, 4 feet tall and 10 square feet for the sign. And the city's sign ordinance allows 1 sign per street frontage for a given piece of property. We also allow wall banners under a different section of the code. A wall banner could be up to 30 square feet. It's called a non-commercial banner, and that could be allowed on an individual property as well. The Planning Commission was supportive of the existing regulations for campaign signs and wall banners, but they could not reach a consensus on recommendations for the campaign stake signs. So that was the sign on a post. That's currently 1 per property. Further, the discussion about campaign signs was really focused on the timing, how long signs can be up, enforcement, and the use of public right-of-way. Specifically, the Commission had a range of discussion about these 3 topics. They weren't able to reach any consensus, and we're hoping to get some direction from the Council. But the first question was on timing. How early should campaign signs be permitted before an election? How soon should they go up? And we had discussion. Currently, our regulations, we have no requirement. You can put the campaign sign up at any time. On the other end of the spectrum, it was talked about 60 days before the election, that should be sufficient time. Quite a range of discussion on the question of enforcement. How will the city enforce whatever regulations we have for campaign signage, and how do we currently enforce campaign signage? So we went the spectrum ranging from not having an active enforcement period during a particular point in time to being very strict with enforcement and actually requiring a deposit from a candidate to guarantee that their signs are in compliance with the city's code, or to defray costs should the staff have to go out and remove signs. So the Commission had no consensus, but just said there's certainly a range of enforcement opportunities, just as there is with timing, a range of timing that can be permitted, and we're looking for input on that. And perhaps the topic that gave us that the most discussion centered around was stake signs on private property. So right now, the code requires that a stake sign, the small sign on a post, that you put that on private property. And there was some discussion about whether or not these types of signs should be allowed in the public right-of-way. We surveyed other cities. We found some cities in Orange County and South Orange County that do allow that. So again, our discussion covered a broad range from not having any regulations and allowing signs on private property to only allowing signs on private property. In the Planning Commission staff report, we identified several of the issues associated with having signs on public property. First, of course, would be safety. These would be signs that could be along the side of a road. The median is also public property. So concern with line of sight, traffic distractions, and the risk associated with installation of signage, especially when you have people in your medians and putting signs and we've got traffic moving on the street at the same time. Certainly the question of aesthetics was raised. We've seen other cities where there's been a heavy proliferation of signs in the public right-of-way. And enforceability. Some cities we've found have tried to have regulations saying, well, you can only have 3 signs per intersection or signs within 15 feet of an intersection. But the more specific the requirements were, the more it falls to code enforcement trying to determine on a constant basis, are there too many signs? Are there too many signs per candidate, and counting and removing, and again, having our own staff being in a median or along the busy rights of way. So in summary, we're asking the City Council to review the Planning Commission's recommendations. We would like input on campaign signs and looking for direction from the City Council as to where we go forward in our process to amend the sign ordinance as desired by the Council. At this point in time, we haven't created a specific ordinance. We don't have a red line version. We don't have the exact wording. So we've kind of moved along in a fashion where we've garnered input, tried to get all the input, and then we'll create the ordinance with the help of our city attorney's office. We'll need to go back to the commission, and then the ultimate action would be by the City Council. And that concludes our report. We have several staff members here as well that have been working on this, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
I want to thank you for your diligence and your thoroughness, and I want to say that I like the staff report. I like the changes that have been made. One of the things that something I would like to just convey, and I think that we should make sure that we put it in, outdoor displays, including merchandise and products. I think it's important that we keep a minimum of 4 feet of pedestrian traffic, to where whether it be the freestanding banners, which is on page 424. I think that we've got to keep a pedestrian path open, basically at the width of a sidewalk, 4 feet, to where whether it be in front of Home Depot or the bike shop on El Toro Road, I think that we've got to have the room for pedestrians to walk by. But that being said, I think the businesses of Lake Forest deserve to be able to display their merchandise outside, whether it be a sale item or that. I think that in this economic times where businesses are scrambling and trying to hold on, I think that we should do everything we can to be partnership with them and allow them to be as successful as they can. So I'd like to make that proposal that whether it be a freestanding banners that maintain a minimum 4-foot path of travel for pedestrians. That, and then I would like to say that
Sorry. Before we start going into the specifics there, I think we should just find out if there are any questions about the report, and then before we start making any changes to that, go to public comment. Then I'll come back to you, if that's all right. Yeah. Okay. So are there any questions specifically related to the report?
One more.
Okay.
On permanent signage on sides of buildings, is that not addressed in here at all? Besides window signs, like signs on building sides?
No, in this particular effort that we undertook, we're looking at temporary and promotional signage only. There is a category in the sign ordinance that is, signage for business, your permanent sign, building signs, wall signs, but we haven't looked at that. This was strictly a temporary promotional type.
Okay, thank you.
Cleanup.
Great.
I did have one general question on the signage, and I'm not sure where this fits in, but I have seen a few, not in Lake Forest, but around the area, these sort of newer digital type signs, like billboards, but I'm not an advocate of billboards, but on a smaller scale, they're lighted with LEDs and that type of stuff, if those are permitted, or you could look at that another time.
That's not included in this, but that's a more contemporary issue, and we have seen surrounding jurisdictions start to get proposals for something like that. We'd have to look at our ordinance. We have, we're a little bit, our ordinance is somewhat old, but electronic message board is kind of getting there, but I think we're seeing a type of sign that we did not see before.
Yeah, because I think some of these would allow you to change the message on it easily without going to a printer and having them reprinted.
All right. With that, are there any public comments?
We've had no requests.
Okay, great. I'll bring it back to Councilman Voights, then. I apologize for...
Hey, it's all right. That was basically my 2 cents on that. I like what we've done with the outside entertainment, outdoor entertainment. I just know that right now in the ordinance is outside displays on aprons and skirts of buildings. Even merchandise cannot be displayed right now, and I like the allowing businesses to allow their merchandise and products to be outside, but maintain that pedestrian pathway. Thank you.
Go ahead. Well, I just a sort of a question or a procedural approach. I'm wondering if we want to discuss this all as a lump or each group by itself and take care of a group and then move on to the next. There is a little interrelationship, but I think if we may be helpful if we do them by group, like temporary banners first and then window signage and then that, and deal with that and then move on. I don't know how the council wants to go on that.
Well, I was thinking along the same lines, but I'm amiable to...
I think that's
okay,
good.
so then let's just, we'll separate out the issue, and we'll just start with looking at the temporary banners. So any specific comments? I know Councilman Voight's already made a few.
A couple, one on the couple I see of temporary is, the people who stand on the corner and wave the signs and swing it and sometimes dance with that. How is that covered in the ordinance?
I don't believe in our ordinance as it's currently written. That's not something that you can do on a regular basis. But under the category of the temporary outdoor promotion permit, where we said, let's look at additional types of signage or things that attract attention or advertise. And in our report to the Planning Commission, we identified 15, 20 different types of signage. So that we didn't have the Commission specifically get into each one and say a yes or a no, but the general recommendation was to increase the allowable types of signage. So I think that's something that we'd go back to the Commission. The sign twirlers and live characters, things like that. The live characters was an example of something that could be considered, but we're not proposing that level of specificity at this time.
Okay, and that's okay. And then the other one that you see is, in my terms, it's trying to get around the sign ordinance, is people who will park a truck with a sign on the truck side, or panel side of the truck, and it's there all day or whatever, and thinking that maybe that's, at least they're thinking maybe that's not covered or a way to get around some of the restrictions.
I believe we have that one currently in the
Okay.
sign ordinance. It's
Okay.
called a mobile sign, so it's not really, it's associated
Well,
with the
but they
business,
park
but
them
you
and-
put it
yeah.
somewhere. We've seen those. Again, this promotional is not proposing to change any of that. It's currently covered in the sign ordinance,
Okay.
and that can be done.
All right, thank you.
Which one are we on now?
The temporary banners.
Yeah, temporary banners. One of the things that I always have a problem with signs, even when we first started signs, we can make all our rules and regulations what they can and cannot do, but I see people doing what the others that are following the rules do not do. So I didn't see in here what we're going to do if they do not follow the rules of not doing it. On the temporary signs, like I've seen that we give them a temporary permit, and when that time frame is up, the sign still isn't removed. It's still there, and sometimes for months. And so what I'm looking for is, where's the teeth?
In regards to the banner permits, our current process is, we use our new permitting software, so we can have a better access as to who has current permits and share that information with our code enforcement officers in the field. So they can be at a location and they can quickly decide or discern whether or not there's a valid permit there. We also put a sticker on the banner that says when the permit was issued. So we're, short of having an electronic tracking device or something where, a button starts blinking red when their time has expired. Our code enforcement staff is in the field. They're familiar with everything that's going on, and I think we do a good job with the resources that we have to have the businesses adhere to the temporary banner permit regulations.
Or within that process, do we also have a process where it can be extended if it is expired? Can someone get an extension for another week, 10 days, or whatever?
Well, we have the overall time period. So if you haven't used all your time period, you could have your next time period go. But once you've used up your annual allotment, there isn't a process to have any more from that point on.
On page 423 and 424, it has some types of outside displays. That was in the Planning Commission report pictures. Some examples, you have the flag banners, the balloons, on-site portable signs, pendants and streamers. Obviously, as we have new grand openings. In the outdoor displays, only on page 424, if that was an outdoor display, could we make that to be a request that be that temporary be the permanent and the long, so they have a 4-foot pathway?
Not the. Okay. As I understand the question, instead of just a temporary outdoor promotional permit, is there a way to make this a year-round permit? You're looking for year-round?
Well, for those businesses that have the access to that, like Home Depot, Foothill Ranch, or Home Depot, El Toro Road.
Yes. There is a process in the existing code. It's not in the signage code, but it's in the commercial code. And through the site development permit process, you can have a longer or a permanent outdoor display area. Both the Home Depots went through that process, and the city designated specific areas and what types of materials could be there. So there is a process to go through with review from the Planning Commission to have outdoor display of merchandise. It's in the commercial zoning regulations. It's not part of this, and we're not proposing any changes to that.
Okay, so that's in the commercial what?
Commercial code.
Commercial
zoning code.
In the zoning code.
The zoning code. Mayor, since you're on page 424 already, there's something I'd like to ask. I can remember a time when we didn't allow tables and chairs outside of a restaurant. Now, many of the restaurants want the outdoor eating, whether they got a patio or not. And one of the things that I'd like to make sure, like the 4-foot path, some do not have a 4-foot path because they'll have the tables and chairs, and it's not necessarily enough width for that. And then they'll have the pie. I call it the pie sign, the flap sign. So now, I'd like to know when they're getting these permits, is staff making sure that they explain to them the criteria of it? Because a lot of times people say, oh, yeah, but they don't read it. A lot of people do not read, even though they know how to read. Because I have been places where I had to get out in the street to walk around because of the tables and chairs in our city. and I'm not going to tell you because I don't want them people to get dinged until we fix this, okay? But that needs to be fixed because we already know it's broken. So I don't have a problem with them in fact, for people who like to eat out there, I don't have a problem with that. But I do have a problem if I have to get in the street to get around it. So some you're going to have to say, you're going to have something in place when you put the requirement in there and make sure that they have enough footage. If not, it's going to have to be denied.
That's correct. We do allow outdoor dining. We encourage outdoor dining with 12 or fewer seats. It's not. It's at a level that is not going to alter the parking requirements for that particular business. So if someone wanted to have outdoor dining, just simple, 3 or 4 tables outside their business, they come in and they show a site plan and they have to demonstrate that they've got that clearance. There could be businesses in town who have not gone through the process and have just put tables and chairs out there. But again, our code enforcement is out there, and these are standard handicap accessible requirements, and so everyone is well aware of the clearance that's required to exist there on the walkway, in between the tables, into the business itself. And again, our code enforcement is out in the field and know what they're looking for.
Handicap accessible, that's a law that we have to keep. But I'm talking about baby keeping them on the streets. In my end of the city where I live, a lot of people walk. They walk frequently, and some of them have a lot of children. I had 5, and when you have 4 or 5 kids, trying to make sure they all stay together, and you tell them to hold hands. The boys don't want to hold hands, but so you got to really watch them so they don't. Well, if it's tight there, mother and kids and all cannot stay on that same street, or they got a stroller, and in trying to get them to keep holding hands and walk safely, I want to make sure that the kids are not given an opportunity to go off the sidewalk to get around, because I have observed it. So I'm all for the eating outside. It gives me more room on the inside and at the restaurant, because I don't like to eat out there with the bugs get on my food. But in the meantime, I do want to make sure that the transportation of walking with your children and a stroller, and you got a couple of babies, isn't hindered. So there'll be some restaurants that they won't be able to do that unless they got something in the back they can open up in the back, or a patio or something. And that's just common sense, so that you have to let them know you don't have enough space. Now I see Mr. Pickle on here. Now, is that class? And Mr. Cowell over here too. Is that classified as what? Is that temporary or what? I see it says stressed. People get real creative, don't they? How is that classified, and can it be ongoing or what?
Okay, this is from the Planning Commission staff report that was attached, and this exhibit is examples of new signage types to consider under a TOPP. So that's our temporary outdoor promotion, and again, we just asked the Commission kind of a broad question: should we increase the number of TOPPs, and should we broaden signage, the types of signage allowable? Right now, we just allow a banner. It's kind of a dull temporary outdoor event. Okay. And so this was just a list of potential things, other signage that we've seen, and it's for consideration. That one, it was noted in the Planning Commission report potentially that these Mr. Pickle or something cannot be visible from the public right-of-way, and one of the commissioners commented, well, why would we have one? Good point. So the Commission has not had a discussion. This was just to present an idea that there's a lot more things that can be used other than a banner. Here's pictures of some. Would you consider them? And they said, yeah, let's take a look at some of these things.
Did anybody bring up the banners as far as the bicycle? Have you all seen the bicycle where a young man has a big banner on there? They even got the electronic one. At first he just had the plain one that's just the flat words. Now he's got it where it's digital and it moves and stuff, and he rides the bicycle all over. You ever seen that one yet?
No.
I didn't think so, because that one I would have liked to seen on here.
All right. Just getting back, I mean, we jumped off track a little bit, so just talking about temporary banners. Are there any more comments at this point, just about the temporary banner part specifically?
On this councilman's view, I like all the new styles of temporary signage out there. So call me liberal here. This is something I think that it giving the businesses a greater latitude on advertising and promotion. So I know we'll send that back with this councilman's approval on these.
On the temporary banners, like the new ones, the characters and stuff, it does get your eye. Or do you have any restrictions on this, that it has to be on their property or in front of their business? Say, like if I had a business next to Councilmember Foy's, and he wanted to get real animated on me, and I'm very conservative, could he put it where it was on my side or wherever, or would he have to stay in front of his business?
If I could to address that question, these additional forms of signage go with the temporary outdoor permit, not with our banner category. And again, the commission hasn't gotten into the details. We were just asking kind of an opening question. So I think that's a good example of something that we really need to look at. Can any of these, whether it be your flag or your A-frame sign or anything else, how far can it be away from your particular business? And the commission will delve into those details if we send this back to them.
I want to make sure that they look at that, because I don't want Councilmember Scott and I having a fight over him being animated and me being conservative. We want to get along, okay?
So
now, are we ready for this yet?
Just about. Okay. So I think a lot of our comments so far have been regarding the temporary outdoor promotion permits, they call TOP.
Yeah.
Okay, the acronym there. There haven't been a whole lot of comments about temporary banners, not that I've heard. So are we, I guess I'll entertain a motion to move forward on the recommended regulations for temporary banners.
I make that motion.
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now we're going to move to the number 2, which is the window signage, which you were talking about there. So
He was talking about
well,
it
you
first.
showed me the picture.
Okay,
So.
yeah. I'm very curious of where this is put, on the little small one and then the large one. And the reason it struck my curiosity, because I had a very large building that was very limited on their signage, and it was a very small signage. And clearly they need more signage, a larger signage, in order to attract business. And they had put some large signage in, and it was inside the building, but you could see it from the street, and it was sitting back. And my thing is, if you got a building this big and you're gonna have one or even 3 of these, it's just not going to do the job. Bottom line. And even with it this big, this evidently is not the whole length of the building, and so there's a lot more room, huh? And then, you're going to put one way over here and way over there. I think I think it's about time with some of the larger buildings that's going in, and a lot of these people now are taking the whole building instead of it being broke up in so many portions. I think we need to tell the planning commissioner, give them some direction to start thinking about square footage instead of just a set 3. We may need to. I know we have a 25%, but if you got 25% and it says 3 banners, if this building is longer, even with a bigger banner, how is that going to really draw something? So we may want to have something that goes according to all of their window space, and allow the banners to take in, or the permanent, whichever one this is. I can't tell if it's a banner, if it's just a piece of paper or something. But we may want to take and get it more to have it fit more the size of that building, because I've had a couple of buildings that they're large buildings, and according to our signage, even if you make it bigger like this, it still didn't have enough signage to really grab somebody's eye. And we need to be where we're helping that business promote themselves, rather than you just zoom on past that little thing. Furthermore, when you're driving along, or even when you walk, it's something that grabs you. That's why people use these bright colors. But this isn't going to do it for a huge building. It needs to be something more. So they may want to look at how to do it by the footage.
Hold on. I think Councilman, he's been keeping quiet, so I heard his button hit.
Thank you. I'd like to actually subscribe to that, what Councilwoman McCullough kindly said a moment ago. The signage needs to be proportionate to the size of the elevation, not just the mere fact that there is an elevation. Something, I would say, like 40% of the window space. Some other municipalities use the 40% as the magic number, but something proportionate, whether it's 40% more or less, something proportionate to the size of the elevation, not the mere fact of the elevation. Thank you.
I have a PS on that.
Okay.
Would you mind? The other thing that I've seen is when a building is on a corner and three sides of it can be seen, and it's large. I was over in a complex, and it's a large building, and then you put these little signs. But if they put one of these signs on the 3 points, because when you're coming down this street, you can see the side. When you're coming down this street, you can see the side. Then you got the front. The back generally can't be seen, although there are very rare that you could see that. And then they're only allowed to put 3 signs out when both sides and the front is large with glass. Then that should be taken into consideration too. It's like being on a corner house, you pay taxes both sides. Well, that's something where they should be allowed to advertise on all 3 of those sides, and more than just one little one, or 3 little ones on, three of these, one on each side. That doesn't work either.
Yeah, if I could clarify, the Planning Commission's recommendation is 3 signs per building elevation, but I understand the comment about the proportion, the size of them, but they had covered that particular issue, so it's per elevation.
Okay. Just trying to help our businesses.
To give you in the audience a proportion, we had a 4 square foot permit for window signage in the past. So if you had one for sale sign of like a dog food special, that would be your allotment, no matter if you had the whole storefront, a Petco. I love the 25% total per windows, but I think that we take away, because in here it says total area shall not exceed 30 square feet. I think we niche that because I think it should be 25% of windowage. I think that going from even where we are now at 4 square feet, that's like one poster. I think that we're doing a great service to our businesses here.
Or you're saying per side?
No, I'm talking about per window frontage. So like this was all one,
per
25%.
Yeah.
Not to exceed 25%. That's my 2 cents on that.
Okay, thanks. Councilman Bass.
Okay, so I think we're talking about window signage, and the pictures on page 421 that's been referenced, where there's one little one, and 422 where there's 3 of them. The pictures tend to apply because it's sale 30 to 50% off. That may be more of a temporary sign, but we're really talking about permanent signs. Now they may change them what they are, but they could always have something like this, right? And just for reference, I mean, when we're talking about the existing of 4 square foot per business, it would seem to me that TV is much more than 4 square feet. And so it's just by way of reference, it's certainly not, in my mind, sufficient. Not the pictures in the TV, but the TV itself, not sufficient in size. And so I'd agree that the 25% per area is good. think there needs to be some thought given on the 30 square foot, because if you're allowing 25% and nothing on the square foot, I mean, you could have 3 pretty good size signs if you have a lot of window area, although businesses have a tendency to not have big windows, like Walmart doesn't have big windows. I mean, a lot of it is wall. That's all.
Okay. Hey, seems like there's been a lot of talk about the 25%. I know Mayor Pro Tem Nick mentioned 40%. I'm hearing some consensus that the 25% might work, but we can still go through that. I think that we're talking about a select number of businesses in town that are going to be looking at this 30 square feet. So, I mean, I would agree with you that that screen's bigger than 4 square feet. But if you have a little pizza shop, then a sign like that might be too big, and people aren't going to be able to see in and see what's going on. So, they probably wouldn't even be concerned with this issue.
Yeah, that's how 25% comes.
Clearly, and the some of the really the bigger stores we have, maybe not the big box, but some of the ones in the Arbor, like a Pier 1 or some of those places, some of the pet stores, they might appreciate this size. Did we hear any? I mean, we haven't had any public comment tonight from businesses. Did we have any at the Planning Commission level?
No, we did not.
Okay. I know each one of us have probably talked to numerous business owners, so we've got this, anecdotal data to work from, and that's probably what's driving a fair amount of this. And I think the commission's probably feeling the same way. But it would have been nice if we would have had some businesses kind of being able to explain their personal interaction with the sign ordinance as it stands right now. So it's right now, like I said, I'm starting to hear some consensus that the 25% might work, but Councilman Nick has suggested 40. So
if I may,
sure.
Thank you. I only said the 40% just as a number. I'm fine with 25%. My main point was not the number itself. I was just trying to articulate that I thought it should be proportionate to the size of the elevation, as opposed to the mere fact that it's one elevation, X number of signs. The larger the elevation, the larger the side of the wall or the window, the larger the sign. 25%, 40%, that's subjective. I'm fine with 25%. And I just want to take a moment and echo what Councilman Voigt's indicated, which I think, or maybe Councilman Bass said it, but I think the total area of all window signs shall not exceed 30 square feet. I think we should do without that. Just 25% of total windows per building elevation, maximum number 3 signs per building elevation. 25% will do, but I'm fine either way. Thank you.
Okay. I'm feeling some consensus around that, so I'd entertain a motion to...
I'll entertain the motion that we push forward to send this back to the Planning Commission with a 25% window per elevation according to window spacage. And then I'll make that motion.
Just to clarify, are you looking for us to take it back to the Planning Commission, or would it be...
are we...
Mayor and council members, we would need to create an ordinance and have it work with the city's existing sign ordinance. We might have to go through a little environmental review and take that back to the Planning Commission. So we need to go back, and there were a couple items still coming up where we need to work on. We still need to solicit more information. So we just kind of want a check-in here with the council, and we definitely need to go back to the commission.
Okay, so is that,
that
motion suffice then?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. All right.
And maybe Nitch, and just on my motion to make a friendly amendment to that, throw out that 3 signs, a question mark, and let them debate it too. Because depending on 25% versus 3 signs. Thank you.
Okay. They've weighed in already, so I think what we're doing is
Just
we're
wait.
giving direction to staff to put together an ordinance, and then it'll have to go through the planning commission and then come to us.
Did the second of that motion accept that friendly amendment?
Is that clear to everyone at this point?
I don't know if we had a second yet.
I didn't hear a second. There was a friendly amendment made to the motion, but there was no second, so the second needs to say yes or no.
There was no second to Councilmember Voigt's original motion. He was the maker of the motion. He was amending it, and no second has been received at all. But we can do motions and seconds, or you can, for direction, you can do that by consensus as well.
Okay.
Yeah, consensus is easier.
Okay.
Aye.
Can I beg of you, Mayor Robinson, if I
Clarify.
could, if I could beg of you, if you could clarify that for
Okay.
me.
My
Thank you, sir.
understanding of the motion, or, well, of the direction, looking for consensus, is well, let me, I think what he's saying is 25% of the window area per building, eliminating the 30 square feet and eliminating the 3 sign per building elevation.
I second that.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Mayor Robinson, I'm sorry. Since you voted on the first element, I think it would help the minutes if you voted
Sounds
on
good.
it. Thank you.
Sounds good. So I have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And unanimous. So, all right. Now we're on to the one that we were talking about quite a bit at the beginning here, the temporary outdoor promotion permits.
Mayor Robinson. Just an observation on that I think the Planning Commission ought to look at more, or maybe they have, and I'm not aware, but on page 423 and 424, items 6, 7, and 8, that's freestanding banners, characters dressed as signage, and air tube dancers, all must be located on site but not visible from the public right-of-way. But the flags, 2 per business. So I think what this is saying is that if you have a street front location, effectively, you should do flag temporary outdoor or tops. I think that's how I would interpret it. Does that seem right?
Mayor and council members, as I mentioned earlier, the commission, when they looked at these, that was one of the comments that we got, was that we had listed some bullet items, and on some of these signage, like the characters and the air tube dancers, it said that we were just suggesting how it may be regulated, cannot be visible from the public right-of-way. And the comment, without, detailed discussion, but one of the comments that we got initially was, if it's not visible from the right-of-way, why would a business use it? So I don't think that that's been, the details of any of these things have not really been gone through. But that could be something, if you want to provide direction to look at that. Should there be a difference between what's out closer to the street versus what's, beside the building? I think one of the questions that we're kind of getting to is, if your business isn't located adjacent to the right-of-way, do you get to put something, out on the frontage of a shopping center when you have a very interior location? So perhaps that's part of a bigger discussion about overall location of these types of signage.
Councilwoman McCullough.
Seeing if he was good.
Well, my preference would be to let the Planning Commission and staff work through that more, as opposed to, here on the fly making a decision or recommendation on that.
You finished?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the things that I'm concerned about is, yes, it should be on their portion of the visibility, but for any that are close to an intersection or the street, I think they need to vent
on how close they can be to the street. You know, even Caltrans, even though I can have a lot of fights with Caltrans, I have had a lot too, they don't allow signage and characters near the on and off ramps because they prove that it is a distraction. So when we're getting to some of our busier intersections, I know like some of the filling stations, when we used to have 3 filling stations on El Toro and Rockville, they would rent, the people that you would see out there selling stuff and dancing, doing all that stuff, they were renting. They had to give that filling station a percentage because they had that frontage. So we need to, I'd like for them to look into that because it does do a distraction from traffic when people are on intersections, especially on our major thorough streets, and that's where people want to be. So I'd like for them to vent that and bring it back to us with some suggestions or with their ideas on it, including checking with the distraction of traffic, making sure that component is put in there.
Okay. I'm sure that there's some businesses that are really looking forward to some changes to this. So I know we want to send some stuff back for further review. I wonder if there's anything that we can agree upon tonight that the commission's already worked through. I'll ask staff's perspective on that, if that seems to make sense, or if it would be better just to table this item while we're still trying to do more research.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, I tend to think that if in fact you can get consensus on something, it might be appropriate to bifurcate some of the things, put those items which you think you want additional discussion on, put them on the side here, make a list, we'll bring those back, or you can direct them to the commission for further discussion. But if you can get consensus on some things, I think it would be prudent so that we can proceed in some fashion. At least you've been able to do that on a couple of them. I think it would be best to move forward if you could.
Okay. Well, then I want to say one thing on the flags, standing up flags. I don't see a name for them. It just says flags. Maybe because I'm being a woman, we got down here, they can only have 2 per business. And if they have room, I'd rather for them to be able to have 3 per business, because I like the way it balances out. It's unbalanced with just 2. It's not balanced. And you need the 3. So that's something, if I can get an agreement on that.
You got my agreement. I'll second that.
Yes, Councilman.
Ms. Ackerman, on these on page 423, on-site portable signs. Is there anything that this is in the top? So these are only temporary signage there. But what would be wrong with a restaurant, whether it be Texas Barbecue, if having their daily special out on their thing, as long as there's a 4-foot walkway to get by on? Would there be anything to exclude them, allowing them to have that out there?
Mayor and council members, if that were to be a desired change, we'd want to add that to a different code section. That would be under permitted signs. And so we could come up with a restriction. Again, we're just focusing on this category of temporary signage.
Okay. Then I'll refrain from that, because I'll make the motion later on, and we'll bring that back to us. But I like everything that's on here, and I think that I think that we are cannot be visible from the right of way. If you say that to the haircut shop or the barber shop on Muirlands Drive, if he has someone standing in front of his store, whether it be big scissors, you can see it from the right of way. So you're basically saying that he can't be seen. So I'd like to niche that, because I think that with the Planning Commission, maybe or maybe right now we can talk about this, because much like when you do a room addition in a homeowners association, you got to get the permission of your neighbors to do widen your driveway, or that. Maybe that would be something that we could include in this, to where we can have the businesses sign off on something like that.
If I'm you're talking about a shopping center, where you'd have to get that. Well, that could be done with a master sign program for the center, of course. But I actually think that's probably the best way that you'd look at that, is look at the signage available for the center, and then make those opportunities available through whatever.
But what we're talking about here is it's not having to send this back. And if we think this through a little bit, we have the cannot be visible from the public right-of-way. So say Texas Barbecues in the back behind Sizzler, where the only way they could be seen from the right-of-way is to go out on the right-of-way. But the fact is, to do that, they're infringing on in front of Sizzler. I don't know where we draw that margin where we allow them to go out to the street to get visibility when they're not really on frontage. And that's kind of where I'm going with this thought. Your suggestions or thoughts?
Well, the commission, as I mentioned, we had originally proposed this, and they had said, they called into question, if it can't be visible from the public right-of-way, why would somebody want to have this?
Exactly.
On the other hand, in their discussions, they recognize some businesses are located in the back of the shopping center. That's the space they have chosen to lease. And so just you can't have signage and go put it on someone else's property. Likewise, you can't take your private signage and put it in the public right-of-way.
That's right.
So a business that's located far at the ends of a shopping center, they could put stuff in front of their own business.
Okay.
I think the question that the commission raised on this is just in general, should promotional signage be visible from the right-of-way? And there was some discussion as, yes, it should be, otherwise it wouldn't be serving its purpose.
Right.
So for the example of Sizzler, they're there right at of course, anything that they put in front of the building would be visible from the public right-of-way. So they thought, well, perhaps that shouldn't be a criteria. Not that they were granting additional leeway to someone who is far away from the right-of-way, but just saying in general, for businesses that are very close to El Toro Road, promotional signage is expected to be visible. That's why they would want it.
Yeah, okay, I like that. That's a great explanation. Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
Also, in talking about doing the signage of visibility and not visible, some of these centers, they have associations where they're making the rules for what you can and cannot do. So you got to make sure that when you put this in place, that you're not discounting the rules that may already be in place. Because some has associations, they have agreements that they've already been made. And one of the examples you have is right there by the dollar store, that cigar store. They don't want people parking in the handicap spaces because they have made an agreement with the landlord that nobody would park there in front of their place. I had to run that one to ground. So there are associations and there are agreements with the people that they're leasing from. So you're going to need to make sure that when you're putting these things in place, that it's not infringing upon that landlord or that tenant's rights that's already in place.
I would expect that would be that the onus would be on the business owner in that instance, and you know, I think we talked a little bit earlier tonight about preemption with the state. There are clearly some things that we're requiring citywide, and property owners can have additional requirements that are put on their businesses, but I think that handicap space thing is violating state and federal law, and their regulation there can't preempt. So if that's an issue that needs to be addressed, I would encourage you to bring it up. So, okay. All right. Well, at this point, what might make the most sense to me, what makes the most sense to me is that we move forward with the recommended regulations that are suggested here. on page 401 with the tops. Okay. So we have current regulations in the middle column. We have recommended regulations. And nix the cannot be visible from the public right-of-way. I think there was consensus on that. So I'll make the motion myself, and I'm looking for a second.
Second that. Thank you, sir.
I'd like to consider amendment, and that is to not allow the small balloons. My concern on the small balloons is, they got helium or something in there to keep them in the air, and Edison has a concern about those escaping and maybe getting caught in electrical lines and that. And, not everyone, ties good knots, and, if there's a bit of wind, it can untie the knot or whatever. And I think that ought to be considered for excluding just more on a safety factor than anything else. And I think that the other signs are a much more attractive alternative. Anyway.
May I comment on that?
Sure.
My only thing is that if you have a new business that's opening and they can't afford the banners yet, and they want to put out some balloons to start up their business as an opening day. We've been doing it for decades with the helium, and I do understand that, but I think the amount of those in the years that we've been using those and the damage that's been done by helium balloons, I don't think it my concern is maybe not as prevalent as yours on that.
Yeah, I respect the opinion, but I'd prefer not to include it in my motion. So.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second. And I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? None. Motion carries unanimously. Move on to live entertainment. Hopefully we can get through this one quickly.
May I, Mr. Mayor? I got to commend our staff, and live entertainment has been being utilized in our city now, and I think to a great extent, and it's been a great job, and I think it's been wonderful for our city and the businesses and the restaurants that have used it. So I make a motion that we accept it as written out.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. I didn't hear you. So.
Oh, I nodded my head. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Aye.
So, unanimous. I'm just going through the motions with that because we're still working on our electronic voting system. It should be installed sometime soon. There's just a couple of hiccups with the installation. So I just want to make it very clear how the vote's going with all of you out in the audience and with anyone who's watching online. So.
If you announce it's anonymous, then they'll know.
All right. And that brings us to campaign signs.
Okay.
So, again...
Okay, while you're waiting for everybody to come up with their campaign signs, I do have something that I would like to make sure that's included. We've always had we started sometime after we were a city, that we had a very strict campaign signage. And the thing is many of us, we obeyed what laws had been put in place for our city. So the thing that get me peppered up is when all other cities have their signs, their campaign signs in our city and in our right-of-way and stuck on our lampposts and stuck everywhere. And our people have to go and take those down, and we're not getting paid for them. That's our staff taking, our code enforcers taking away their time, and that's our time's money for correcting signs that are in our city. Some of them have them way up high and all like that. One of the things that I propose, whatever we do with the campaign signage, I'll probably go along with it. But one of the things I do want, when we finish with what we will and will not do on our campaign signs, I would like for a notice to be sent to our cities and and the county clerks, remember they have the little meetings because they need to know that this city, and that way if you send it there to the voters registration, when they pick up their packet, they'll know there is a city that is letting them know what can and cannot be done, and you will be charged for us having to remove them. We already have it in our ordinance that you will be charged after voting is over, a certain amount of days afterwards. But I don't feel that our city should keep paying to take other people's sign down. Our code enforcers got codes for our city that they need to be doing, and other people coming in. And when I checked with the FPPC, because I'm on that administration, they says, if you would note them and ask it to be given out, because the different classes and stuff, that means all the city clerks and all the clerks for the county thing too, they would have that in their material. They couldn't say that they did not know. We're still working on seeing if the legislators do something about it, but right now, this year, we're supposed to work on it again. And if we can be ahead of the curve and send it out to the cities, this is our signage ordinance. You know, not for everything, just for political signs, and to the county clerk, would you please include this in the packet? Our clerk can tell you, get a whole big old packet of stuff you got to go through when you sign up to run, and it's included. City of Lake Forest do not allow signs to stay up such and such a time or in the right of way or whatever we finally come up with. I don't know what we're going to finally come up with because we're sending it back, but what we finally come up with, and not a whole bunch of sheets of paper, we should be able to put it on one sheet of paper and send it to each one. In fact, we don't even have to put it on paper. You can electronically send it now that we got a new system going in. But send it. So when they do the training, they will have a copy of they will know all the cities' sign ordinance for this county because we're going to be setting that pace. We're working on that at Administration Policy Committee, but we can start now by making sure it goes out electronically to the county and all the 34 cities. That's what I asked. However we want to tweak this, I'm comfortable with it as long as we send it out where people don't flood us with their signs.
Okay. Thank you. Just to reiterate, because it's been a while since Ms. Ackerman's first comments about this, the Planning Commission was pushing this back to us. They wanted us to focus on this issue, so I think it's something that we need to deal with. We shouldn't be sending it back to them. We need to be looking at this ourselves and then giving direction on whether or not there should be a change in the ordinance. So I'll open it up for council discussion.
All right, if I may, I am going to run with this for the campaign signs, given that I'm the one who succeeded in bringing it up for discussion. And to make this easier on us, I'll make it in two parts: private properties and public properties or public right-of-way. As far as private property, the staff and the Planning Commission is recommending what is shown in bold letters on the bottom of page 420, the changes. The maximum number from one sign per store frontage will be changed to no limit, and the timing will be changed to allowing it 45 days within the election and for them to be removed within 5 days. So that's what staff's recommendation and the Planning Commission's recommendation is. I'll make this very simple. I'll make motion for us to adopt it. Can I look to somebody to second it?
Motion's been made. Is that clear? So it's okay.
I think you said on the limit, no limit but I think you used a business term. You really meant street frontage, right?
As it is today, it's one sign per street frontage. And actually what it should be really as of today, it should be one sign per candidate per street frontage, but it doesn't matter. It says today it's one sign per street frontage. We are changing that to no limit. Basically, there is no limit on the number of the signs that you can put in your yard, in your front yard.
And again, we're talking about private property here.
We're talking private property specifically.
So you're talking about the property owner's agreement that that sign can go there?
Of course, it's private property. It must be.
Yeah, just clarifying that.
Of course.
And no limit, so they could have 10 of one-person signs up.
Yes, sir, it's their property.
I'll second the motion. So,
Okay.
any discussion?
No.
Okay, then I'll call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye.
All in favor? Aye.
All right, that'll
Aye.
take
Passed
me.
unanimously.
That'll take me to the second part, and that is signage on public property. I don't want to sound negative, but for whatever reason, whether self-serving interest, whether particular idiosyncrasies, for whatever the reason may have been over the last 20 years or so, this council did not allow Americans to exercise their constitutionally given right of free speech under the pretense that it clutters the city, under the pretext that it lowers property values. That's rubbish. That's nonsense. It has nothing to do with property values. If anything, Irvine, like for like, enjoys higher prices for real estate and for business opportunities than we do in Lake Forest. So does Laguna Hills. They both allow campaign signs. You don't need to be a real estate agent, and for disclosure purposes, I used to be one. You don't need to be one to know that. So does Beverly Hills, so does San Francisco, Chicago, New York. And they all have good property values. Boston. And all of Europe. It has nothing to do with property values. It has to do with leveling the playing field. Leveling the playing field. That is what this council, not this council, that is what councils previous to this one try to avoid. Campaign signs allow a candidate to get his name out there. It does not guarantee a vote. It just gets the name out there so that when the message is heard, the individual getting the message pays attention because he or she remembers the name. Then maybe they help the number of the votes to some extent, not materially. It just helps the ID get established. That ID establishment is something that an incumbent enjoys. The longer the incumbent in office, the more that name is recognized. Campaign signs only level the playing field, at the candidate's expense, by the way, or the donors, not at government's expense. Look at this chart on page 425. Irvine allows them. Maximum number, no limit. Laguna Hills allows them. Maximum number, low limit. Now let me tell you what we did in Lake Forest. For 20 plus years, we picked them up, we threw them in the dumpster. I started my campaign with 3,000 signs, I'm told. I didn't pay for them, but I'm told they started with 3,000 signs. Today I have in my possession 231 signs. Imagine that. That's what I promised myself I'll do. Right by the people of Lake Forest. Is it in my own self-serving interest? Absolutely not. Because there's a possibility I will run in 2.5 years. Do I want people to be able to get their names out there? If I were to be self-serving, I wouldn't want that. But I would want that. This is America, and that's practicing democracy. Get your name out there. Put your name out there. It's democracy. It's free speech. That's one of the things this country is founded on. As such, you may hear some opposition tonight. It's amazing when we're running, or when you hear people run, and then when they take office, years later, how views change. Well, I, for one, will not change ever. I don't owe this office to anyone but the people of Lake Forest. And I, for one, want people to be able to exercise their rights. And I don't want them to have to dig into the dumpster to pull their signs out. That's a tragedy. That's a blow to democracy. That's what the city did under the direction of previous councils, and that's a shame. With that, I also want to go further. I tried to file charges against someone who actually came onto my private property last September, or actually September 2012. And interestingly enough, the district attorney's office could not charge the individual because they told me, Mr. Nick, there is no ordinance in Lake Forest that makes it a chargeable offense, which blew my mind. Somebody comes onto my private property, takes my campaign signs, puts them on the back of his truck, is confronted at home. My signs are in his possession, and yet the district attorney cannot do anything about it. So they said, you need to win, you need to get on the council, and you need to adopt what the city of Costa Mesa has adopted. So I am going to actually, during my closing comments, if this is not the right time, I am going to look to one of my colleagues to help me so that we can request the staff and the city attorney to come back to us to tell us what it is the city of Costa Mesa has today that criminalizes defacing or stealing campaign signs. With all that said, I conclude my comments. Thank you.
Yes, no?
There's already law in the state law, campaign laws, when you get your paperwork about messing with people's sign. And I don't feel that I need to support more legislation than that. Whenever you deface or take somebody's signs down, unless there is a city ordinance that overrules it, it's already a law. So,
okay.
A lesson it's breaking a lesson is something that is not in our law of what you can and cannot, and where you can and cannot put it. It's not against the law to do it.
Okay. I think Councilman Nick mentioned, or Mayor Pro Tem Nick mentioned he might include that in his...
I'm just letting you know
yeah, I understand.
Support that.
Understand. Okay, so are there any other comments about allowing signs on public property?
My concern isn't the gentleman running for Lake Forest City Council or that. It's those that are running for state assembly or Congress and putting up a bunch of signs and dumping them in Lake Forest, because if we don't have any kind of rules that maintain the clarity on our streets, these campaigns that are looking for a place to dump them, and you said that you named a few cities that don't allow or do allow them, but the fact is Mission Viejo, our neighboring city, does not allow them. So that means we, at campaign season, will be used all Geronimo, all Muirlands, all Trabuco, all of Rockfield will be covered with Mission Viejo city council candidates. That's what my concern is, not about those that are running in our own city. So it's just people, the companies that actually print signs and post signs politically throughout the county of Orange and the state of California look for cities that they can dump signs in and put signs up because they get paid per the sign. So if they can do 200 signs in Lake Forest or 500 signs in Lake Forest, that's what they'll do because they charge the candidate per sign they post. And if Lake Forest becomes that dumping ground for that, and so it's nothing against free speech. It's a matter of getting free speech and having those businesses or those residents that are support you put your signs up. It's not just coming into our city and driving down the street and putting as many signs up El Toro Road as you can. It's a matter of getting out there in the community and getting those people to support you to put signs up. So that's what my fear is that the cities like Mission Viejo, who does not allow it, will be posting their candidate signs on our streets. And so that's my concern. That's my concern. So that's where I stand.
Councilman Bass.
Yeah, I just, for one, had a point of clarification with Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Nick. You talked about freedom of speech and property rights and all that. Were you referring to on private property or on the public right-of-way?
No, private property we already talked about. I'm talking about public right-of-way.
I think it's a little bit more limited on the public right-of-way. So if we do it on the public right-of-way, how do we do it, permit it, if that's the direction we go, so that it doesn't create any traffic hazards in terms of visibility of people pulling out from an intersection and using sight lines, and also putting them in medians? And I don't know how someone can safely put one in a median. That.
Can I address that?
Absolutely. I think it was addressed to you.
Thank you, sir. As far as a comment by my good friend, Councilman Woods, no Mission Viejo candidate is going to put their signs here. It's, in reality, those signs cost anywhere from $5 to $7. If you're running for City Council in Mission Viejo, you would be a fool to advertise yourself in Lake Forest. You're not going to get that much mileage for your money. And if you're that dumb, then good for you, I guess. As far as addressing yours, Dave, I would just look to Irvine, how they've done it. I spoke with a couple of individuals at the City Hall in Irvine. They don't have an issue. I have family who has lived in Irvine close to 40 years. There hasn't been an issue of them driving along the side, along the road, and possibly not being able to have an obstruction of what Mrs. Ackerman said, line of sight. But I'm fine with any regulations. I want to make sure that we protect drivers' visibility. We want to make sure we protect, and we want to do this the right way. But banning them is just, we need to work around it. We need to make it happen. However, like I said, Irvine does it, Laguna Hills does it. I can't imagine that it's a bad thing as far as drivers or clutter, because they wouldn't have done it. and many, many cities in the world do it. Political signs, a couple of months before the election, it's part of democracy. But again, I don't want them to cause a traffic accident. I surely don't want a sign that is 50 square feet, at the corner of an intersection, making it a blind intersection. That is not what I'm suggesting.
Any other comments? Okay. I have a question for the city attorney, so hopefully you can help address this. But can we craft an ordinance that is campaign sign specific if it were in the public right of way, or does that end up flowing into other issues? So could there be other types of signs, or clearly we can't say, well, I shouldn't say clearly. My guess would be that we can't say signs for city council campaigns in Lake Forest.
That's
but I don't know, maybe we
Thanks,
can.
Mayor. That's a really good question, and the city may give preference to non-commercial signs over commercial signs. So on public right-of-way, you may permit political signs and other non-commercial signs, and prohibit commercial signs. So it's all right to give preference to political speech over commercial speech. What we cannot do is distinguish between types of non-commercial speech. So what we do with regard to campaign signs, we have to allow substitution of other non-commercial messages there. So I have seen city ordinances that allow local candidates to use public property, but prohibit candidates for state office or other jurisdictions from using public property. And we wouldn't want to go down that road, because the burden for distinguishing non-commercial speech and prescribing non-commercial content is very, very high. It's a hurdle that is virtually impossible to clear. I haven't heard you proposing that tonight, but to answer your question, you may give that opportunity to non-commercial speech, but you may not regulate the content of non-commercial speech.
Okay, so just understanding that clarification, any type of non-commercial free speech that could be put on a sign could be, if we were to approve something like that, could be put in the public right-of-way. Is that correct?
You would be able to, if there's a political sign allowed, you may substitute another non-commercial message. The likelihood of that is up to you to predict.
Correct. So if someone, for instance, had a sign that said, "I hate Obamacare,"
stop bombing Iraq.
Yeah, or something like that, then they could start, they could have those signs up. And then would the same, could the same limitation hold if we had some of these timing issues? Because they wouldn't necessarily be tied to a political campaign, but could we tie it to an election cycle, and then how would it?
Yes, and then when that opportunity sunsets, so does the other opportunity sunset.
And could we tie it to our election cycles,
Yes.
or would it be any election? So like if
Believe it
there's
or
a primary,
not, yeah. It's just when the form's available, it's available to all non-commercial advertisement, and then when the form's no longer available, it sunsets for all types of non-commercial advertisers.
Yep, I guess my question is, so like in a primary election, in a June election where we don't have a city council race, you wouldn't be able to put up
form's
signs.
closed.
Okay, all right.
And
So that
I'm sorry, and that's content neutral, right? The opportunity opens and closes, but without regard to content, it's another event.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look at where the loopholes are, where someone says, well, there were 4 elections this year in some way or another, and so we fell under this 45-day window for all 4. But if we can limit it to 1, then that helps me understand it a little bit better.
That's it.
Yeah, and that's probably more of my concern. I mean, I share Councilman Nick's viewpoint that people should be able to get their name out there. I had signs in my campaign at the behest of my supporters, not personally, because I've been around it enough that I know signs to a certain extent help you get your name out there. But if you're not campaigning in a variety of different ways, your chances of success are pretty minimal. The signs have a extremely minimal impact, even though they're the visible thing that so many people see almost daily when you're driving down the street. You probably think they have more of an impact than they do, but there's countless studies that show that they have a minimal impact. And I'm not saying that because I'm sitting here fact, I've said that to people that are sitting up here even before I was elected. So, that's a statement that, I believe through and through. So, okay,
Mayor?
well.
Mayor?
Yep.
I need to ask you something, or whomever can answer this. I need some clarity, and I need some answers. Number one, you're saying that we can put political signs in the right-of-way. That's not something that I voted against to begin with when it first came up. The only thing I'm asking now is, are you stating that you can put political signs in our medium where we have our plants and our water, where the sprinklers can get broke, like has happened sometime when some of the assemblymen and different ones put their signs in there? Are you saying that they can put it in our right-of-way? Are you including the center mediums that has plants and water heads in there, watering devices in there that can be damaged with the stakes? Are you saying that we're going to do that? Because if you're saying that, I want to know who's going to pay when they break them water heads, like they have been done before, even with the ordinance in place. Or are you saying the right-of-way is like on the public little green span before you get in the street? And who's going to take the responsibility of someone running out there in that medium to put those signs out and coming back? Maybe they put out late night, maybe they put out early morning. I don't know. But that's something that I would like to know. If we take, when our attorney is looking up all this other stuff, if we've given people permission to put that sign in the center of our right-of-way, and say I send my husband out there to do it, and he does it, and he get hit by a car, and he die, I'm going to sue the city for wrongful death, because I would have sent him out there if you hadn't told me I could go out there. So I'm just giving you a scenario of what could happen. So when we talk about right-of-way, are we including the mediums where our plants are?
Can I
And who's going to pay for those sprinklers to get repaired?
Since you kind of initiated it, yes.
Thank you. I'll
Nick's
answer.
going to pay. Oh, thank
No,
you.
it's,
Put them out there.
you're asking a question, madam, with all respect, that is not sensible. And let me tell you why that is totally not sensible. No one in the right mind goes in the middle of the street to put a sign in a median just because there's a campaign, just because there's a sign in your hand. It is against the law to go walk in the middle of the street onto a median to put a sign. So to me, state law already precludes that. State law does not allow you to walk in the middle of the road on Lake Forest Drive to put signs. So you're breaking the law in the first place. State already makes it, I guess it's the vehicle code that says you cannot walk in the middle of the street. We don't need to babysit that.
Mayor Pro Tem, I know that what you're saying, you may really truly believe it, but due to the fact I've lived here, I've watched it, and I've seen it, even with an ordinance in place, and if you would check with our code enforcement, or in fact, even some of our first responders, like the police, they can tell you there are people that, like you said, they're a fool. I don't call them fool. I call them, maybe soften it a little bit and say foolish. But even our public works person can tell you some of the things. I don't know how often you're down in my area of town, but oftentimes people with children, with baby, pregnant, old, and all different ones, go across the medium, stand in the medium, and finally read the sign that you're not supposed to be there, and turns around and go back, and then sometime come back again. So I don't know where you be, but I do a lot of people watching, and I have observed it. And there was a time that many of our water sprinklers got broken because not only it wasn't just political. Before we had the ordinance in place, the realtors were putting their signs in the medium, and they put the stake down and break that blasted sprinkler hole, and once punctured a pipe that scooted all over. So these things does happen. If there was not people breaking the law, then our chief and all his helpers would be out of a job. We wouldn't need them. People are going to do what they do. People do foolish and stupid things. And I'm telling you, when I mention these things, it's because I have observed it and I know it to be a fact. This is not a myth or something I'm throwing out hypothetical. These are things that has happened, and it probably will happen again. I just want to know who's going to pay for the sprinklers and who's going to pay if somebody get hurt, because these people do stupid things and like riding their bike on the wrong place and then going to turn around and the mother going to call me and tell me she's going to sue the city. Her son got killed because he was doing something stupid on his bike. So people do foolish things. Our job up here is, yes, to run the city, but it's also to anticipate things that we put in place and make it a law that if it's going to, on the long term, is it going to give us a whiplash back? That's why I asked and made the statement that I made. It wasn't hypothetical. It is a fact. We have had this happen in this city. I don't know how many other cities have, but we have had that happen in this city. And if you go in our history, you'll find it out.
I'm going to agree with both of you. I've seen it happen. I also agree that you're violating a law in going in there, just like people are who are standing there. So, I think that, whether or not we pass something tonight.
We're not passing nothing tonight.
Whether or not we do.
I'll go ahead and pass it.
Whether or not we do, people would be precluded from doing that because there's another law in place that keeps them from doing it. So I wouldn't be concerned about that issue personally, but I can understand your concern. So, okay, well, we're still stuck on this.
Still didn't, Mayor,
second.
I still didn't get my answer on who's going to pay.
Taxpayers.
I think one of the issues that would come into play there, just like they would with any situation, would be that you have to prove who actually caused the damage. So if you can prove who caused the damage, whoever caused it, in my expectation would be the ones to pay for it. But if you were running for office and I grabbed one of your signs and put them in that center medium, broke the pipe, should you have to pay for it or should I have to pay for it? First of all, I shouldn't have taken your sign, and second, I should be the one that would have to pay for it. It wouldn't be fair for you to do it, but that's
You shouldn't
one of
have
the
signs in this in a medium, is what I'm saying.
I agree with you
It's because
wholeheartedly.
of the water sprinklers, and because the water sprinklers going to come on, they're going to get wet, and they're going to look a mess, and they're going to curl. See, that's where I'm coming from with that. I don't have a problem
Councilman
with the rest
Basu.
of it right away, but I do have a problem with our planting that's going to get smashed down and look a mess when they get you going in there. I do have a problem with the center mediums when we've tried so hard to beautify our cities and put the plants in, put the water in. You want to stick them on corners and you want to stick them other places. I do have a problem with the center medium. That costs us money.
I can appreciate that.
And I
for
don't
sure.
want you trampling on it.
I won't.
That's how I'm going to get you.
I'm sure you will. I will give Councilman Bass, the one that hasn't had to go through a campaign cycle yet, a chance to talk.
He was here.
So,
I mean, as a candidate.
Actually, I helped out in a campaign one time. But anyway, there is an example of people violating that median thing in Lake Forest and the city having to spend money to keep that from violating. And that's on, if you look on Lake Forest Drive from Rancho Parkway almost to the 241, right by the skate park. There's a fence there because people kept going, would go back and, they'd take the shortcut. So sometimes you have to protect people from themselves, unfortunately. But with that said, it seems like, one, my observation would be, is that whatever we decide on the campaign signs, we ought to have that come back to us for a little bit more refinement, because I think there's some issues to decide on that, rather than to the Planning Commission, because they already punted the whole thing. So I think we got to get it in a better direction before we actually get them to put it in the Planning Department in more of a ordinance form. But it seems to me on the ones in the public right-of-way that we ought to look at, in the median or not. My preference would be more not. And then on the right-of-way on the side of the streets, what distance, if any, should it be from the intersection? That could help with the visibility part from a driving, safety standpoint. But if you have it mid-block, you still have the visibility for the driver seeing the sign and that without having, I think it's a balance between the safety and then seeing it all. And so, I guess with that, if it's appropriate.
Give me just 1 second, if I could beg of you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to put your mind at ease, Dave. It won't obstruct the visibility because they cannot be more than 4 feet high. So it's pretty much their yard signs. Even if they are right at the intersection, it will not block your view because imagine they're 4 feet tall.
Yeah, well, most don't block my view.
Because they cannot be more than 4 feet tall. I mean, it's already in here in the code. So
yeah,
and they're only this little. I mean, the size is there also. So
right.
they're not going to block.
Yeah, sports cars and people shorter than me might. I mean, like I said, it does block me. But I think these are things that I think we got sort of our arms kind of around it, but not totally. That I think just need a little bit more input from both planning and the city attorney's office on like issues as how we can determine what ones can be restricted or not permitted on the right-of-way during the campaign season and that. So we already have a motion on the private property ones, right?
Mhm.
That was passed.
Yeah, that's already done.
So on the public right-of-way, I would, my motion would be for staff to report back on some options relative to permitting them on the right-of-way that's on the street side and whether we can limit it as to just candidates in Lake Forest or whatever limitations are permitted. Whether it is an issue or concern adjacent to an intersection, and also the time limit. I mean, I like the 45 days, prior to the election, and then 5 days to clean up. That would be my motion.
I can't second that motion because we already have a motion on the floor that's been seconded.
We do?
Nick made a motion, and
No, I did not.
didn't you make a?
No, there's not. There was
Did
one
you
with.
second?
No, there was one with private property. There hasn't been a motion at all on public
And
property.
Okay.
there was
issues at all.
consensus on that one.
There's
Now we're-
consensus, okay.
And now we're
Then
on
I'll
the
second it.
public property aspect of it.
I'll second it with a friendly amendment. You're saying to bring this back, and when it comes back, since this is still campaign themed, we had an issue where, what you call those things? The motorhomes? We had a issue with mobile motorhomes having huge, these big, long ones that looks longer than a bus. And they had big signs on those. That presented a problem with them being parked, taking up several parking spaces and having big, huge banners on it. So I would like for that to go ahead, so when it comes back, we can have all the components of campaign signs taken care of at that time. So would you accept my friendly amendment?
Yes.
And I do have a friendly amendment. The city of Irvine does allow campaign signs on their public streets on the right-of-way, but not in the center medium. The center mediums are off limits in Irvine, so no one's running on the streets there. And they also have on how many are allowed on a block space. I think that we can maybe rein it in, and I think and maybe just let staff go to Irvine ordinances. I think it's one per corner, and then so many per block. I think it's 3 per block, and no center medium. And I think that to limit how long we are inundated with signs and still allow free speech, I'd like to propose, and it's just a proposal, but a 30-day prior to election instead of 45. That's my.
I would like to make a substitute motion at this point, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Knowing that it needs to be voted on first. 30 days, I'm going to make a quick comment. 30 days would not be adequate because, correct me if I'm wrong, but absentee ballots go out about 5 weeks or so before the election. So 30 days before the day of the election, it's not handsome enough. Putting that aside, putting aside the fact that absentee ballots go out 5 weeks or so ahead of the election, 4 weeks or so, 30 days is just not adequate. This is my motion. I request, I guess I'm indirect at the same time, the staff to come back to us with an ordinance whereby we adopt the primary characteristics of the Laguna Hills sign regulations on public property, however, excluding center medians, and any other thing that the city attorney may think would be of good public policy. I can't think of anything else. I can't think of anything except precluding, forbidding center medians. Besides that, I cannot think of anything. Just to reiterate, it would be Laguna Hills, allowed on public property, maximum number, no limit, just like it says on page 425, 60 days prior to the election and 10 days afterwards, after the day of the election. Can I look to somebody to second it?
So, is the motion clear?
Yes, but let me just ask a question of the city attorney on that. The motion said, I believe, to come back with an ordinance. If you come back with an ordinance, first reading, how much opportunity do we have to discuss it and modify it and move it forward?
Mayor and Council, at first reading, all kinds of opportunity.
Okay.
I do think, however, that, as Ms. Ackerman indicated earlier, this is going to be a zone text amendment, so whatever you do will have to go back to the commission anyway, and then come back up the pipeline to the council.
So the proposal was Dave Bassis was making the amendment, and he could take the friendly amendments or not friendly amendments.
Well, substitute
motion.
precedent over the initial motion. So, the motion's been.
Secondly?
It has to be voted up or down before you can.
So, his motion is to direct staff with an ordinance to adopt the Laguna Hills regulations on private property, excluding center medians. And then it sounds like anything else that you might find illegal.
Well, what we thank you. We'd give attention to the First Amendment considerations that we were discussing previously, and that Mr. Bass asked for. Absolutely.
So, motion's on the floor.
So the motion that's on the floor right now is a 60-day prior to election?
60 days prior, yes, sir. And 10 days.
It's the Laguna Hills, which is on page 425. He's looking for a second.
And then if he gets a second, you got to vote it down, and then we can go back to the original.
Well, I would prefer the 45 days, but to get this moving on,
Can I change? Can I?
well,
I'm fine with 45. If he's hung up on 45, I'm fine with it. I'm fine.
Are you willing to amend that, Mr. Council?
I'm amending one.
what if we just, is it possible to just withdraw all the motions and substitutes and friendlies that are out there and just start with one straight
Well,
That's what I did.
If there's consensus to do so.
Yeah, I mean, just to make it a little bit clear
All
as
right.
to what's...
Then I'm going to make a motion, fine. Everything
Okay,
clear.
wait. Okay, hold on. We can't.
No.
So
No.
maybe you can give me a little instruction here since I'm in my second.
Right.
Just,
Yeah, Mayor and Council, there's a substitute motion pending, but no second. If everyone who made a
So it fails
motion,
for lack of second, that's what the mayor has
yeah,
to say.
but if everyone wants to
Second
withdraw
date
their
passes.
motions, they would do that by getting the chair's attention.
he may second me.
I'm trying to make it easier for staff and the clerk to write
For-
this whole thing.
You don't have to worry about them.
So
Just-
yours is for 45 days and follow the...
I changed that 60 days to 40. So it'll be Laguna Hills, no central medians, anything else that the city attorney may think will be against good public policy, and it won't be 60 days, it'll be 45 days.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a new substitute motion.
Right.
Second.
Okay, I have a
Is there a
second.
There's a second. Okay. So
Take a-
all in favor? I'll take
I
a
want
roll
the
call since.
substitute motion read as it is being stated before we vote, please.
Okay. You want to give it a shot, or would you like me to?
Oh, I like it to come from over here, if you don't mind.
No problem.
Thank you.
The motion is for staff to come back with an ordinance to adopt the primary characteristics of the Laguna Hills sign regulations on public property, however excluding center medians, and anything else that the city attorney feels is good public policy, First Amendment issues. Allowed on public property, no limit, 45 days prior to an election. The 10 days after election was not clarified or changed, 10 days.
No, it was not changed.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Nick, and it was seconded by Councilmember Bass.
All right. So, is there any discussion?
So you're saying that we have no limit, so have as many signs as we want? Is that correct? Mayor
Yes,
Pro Tem?
sir. Yes, sir.
So
The limit is the money that you're going to have to spend. There's already a limit. There's an inherent limit to public to those signs, and the limit is dollars. They each cost $7. That's the limit right there.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. I'll call for the vote.
Aye.
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 is this coming back to us?
It'll
Yes.
it'll go to the commission, come back to us in the first read if the commission.
Aye.
Back in the form of ordinance. But you can tweak it again when it comes back.
Aye.
Okay,
Okay.
go ahead.
Aye.
Yes.
Okay. Carries unanimously.
Just a question. So does it, as a city attorney, does this then go to the planning commission and then come back to us?
Well, it would in normal course unless the council gives us direction to bring it
So
back
they'll take
first,
both that and the private property one together?
if that's the council's intent.
Okay. Since
We had said that the campaign was going to be separate, didn't we?
It's
but that,
Mayor,
but that
maybe you want
wasn't
to
tied
get
up in
clarity
a
on that.
motion. So, how would you like that clarified? Would you like a motion that it just stays at the council level and doesn't go to the commission?
Yeah, if you want to change the normal process,
Okay.
I think you should ask that it come here first.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion with the ability to, that this campaign sign ordinance only is green lighted when a November election, when city council people from Lake Forest up, so that means June elections are off limits to campaign political signs, correct?
We'll look at the Laguna Hills ordinance, but I think that's how it works.
Okay. And so
I
is there a
second that motion, sir.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. All right. Since we've gone a few minutes past the 10:30 time frame per our own policy, we have to decide whether or not we're going to move forward or not. So
I make a motion to move forward for a few minutes.
we have one more
A
item.
few minutes, that's 3 minutes?
But for however long it
3 minutes,
takes.
you just took a half an hour on one thing? I'm going to say until we...
That one thing was very, very important.
Yeah.
I make a motion for us to proceed until 11 p.m.
Support.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Are you? You're abstaining? Okay.
I got to go to Sacramento tomorrow morning.
Okay.
I got a flight.
Catherine? Mayor Pro Tem. Or,
You already got 3 votes. You don't need my vote.
I just want to make the vote clear. So you can abstain or vote no or support.
I don't care. Yes, I'll do it.
Okay.
It's
So-
not going to matter. 'Cause
4
I
ayes,
got
1
3 votes.
abstention.
Okay.
All right, item 16.
Agenda item 16, consideration of certain standard recurring city council agenda reports submitted by Deputy City Manager, Director of Management Services.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, this was placed on the agenda at the request of Mayor Robinson. The staff has nothing further to add. I would simply say that we listed every recurring item on your agenda without eliminating any, with no particular recommendation as to any of them. We've tried to give you some information relative to the amount of time it might take to do some of those. But we have nothing further to add at this juncture. Be certainly willing to answer any questions the council might have.
Mayor? I'm asking that I'd like to make a motion to continue this to next meeting so I can dive into a few of these things. I don't quite understand why they need to be removed or why they're on here or not. And unfortunately, I haven't got a chance to check on that. So I would like this continued until next meeting. Thank you. Can I get a second?
There's a motion to continue the item to the next meeting. Is there a second?
Second that.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. There you go. Brings to item 17.
Agenda item 17, request for appointment League of California Cities, Association of California Cities, Orange County, and/or the Orange County City Selection Committee, submitted by City Clerk. There are no new notifications.
So, City Manager comments?
I have nothing further this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councilman Bass.
In the interest of time, I'll defer my comments to the next meeting. There was nothing urgent.
Councilwoman McCullough?
I attend the SCAG, Senior Citizen Housing Transportation, Senior Citizen Advisory Council, Mental Health, and Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's celebration, and any other information you need. You can check with me later. It's according to the 1234 rule that I'm reporting that to you. Over and out.
Councilman Voights.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Nick.
I thank you all. I thank you, Mayor Robinson, for your leadership. I wish everyone the best life has to offer. Good night.
I'm going to keep it quick. As mayor this year, I'm getting invited to a ton of events, so it's very exciting. The Chamber's at quite a few of them, and it's been a pleasure working with them. I really look forward to a good partnership this year, supporting a lot of the business openings here in town. A couple that I've attended, one was on, I believe, January 10th at a new service company called Brain Balance next to Daphne's in the Arbor. They provide services for children that have things like ADHD and Asperger's and things like that, and seems like a great new service provided here in town for kids that might be struggling. And the owner, they have 75 stores. The president was out from New York. He has a book called Disconnected Kids. He autographed one for the city. I'm going to make sure that it's at City Hall, so if there are any staff members that might have their immediate family or extended family or friends who are struggling with those issues, they might be able to read through this book and learn a little bit about his philosophy on treating and dealing with those issues. The second was I was at the Intertech expansion opening, just a couple of buildings up from us. There were about 150 people there last Thursday. A great reception. They were a fun bunch. I really enjoyed that and getting a tour of their facility. They presented me with a very nice pen. which I'll make sure is in the council office so that the entire council can enjoy. And with that, I want to thank you all for sticking around for a long meeting tonight, but hopefully we got some things accomplished, and have a good evening. And meeting adjourned.